11 Alive News Weekend Mornings starts now.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ariana Manise.
I'm Dan Kennedy. Great to be with you here on 11 Alive Plus, bringing you coverage of the No Kings protest happening today in Atlanta and all across the country.
Yeah, that's right. All across 50 states, millions are taking to the streets for the No Kings protest, a demonstration happening in all 50 states across the country, including right here in Metro Atlanta.
Yeah, demonstrators trying to get their message across that there are no kings in America. Let's take a live look from our chopper right now, giving us aerial views from the crowd in Atlanta. They started gathering there at the Atlantic Civic Center earlier this morning. Things officially kicking off around 10 o'clock this morning, and this particular event set to last until 1 o'clock this afternoon. They have a podium set up there before a crowd of what looks to be at least 1,000 people or so, though we expect to get some solid estimates a little later today. And then closer to 1 o'clock, we're told that they're going to be marching from the Civic Center about 1.5 miles to the Georgia State Capitol, where they will continue to get their message across.
Yeah, and we saw this situation play out over the summer. Back in June, we saw a very similar No Kings protest, and today they're hoping that this is one of the larger demonstrations that takes place, and millions are expected across the country to also participate in No Kings protests. According to the group's website, at least 2,500 registered locations are happening. Back in June, there were about 2,000 locations also participating. And also, most of the return of this protest, the group says, is due to the Trump administration sending mass agents into the streets at U.S. cities across the country that they say is terrorizing these communities.
We do have a reporter there live on the ground. We'll be checking in with Stephanie Warnock throughout the morning to tell us what organizers and protesters are saying as they try to get their message out. By the way, these protests planned across Georgia and the country this weekend.
Yeah, and we're going to go to 11 Alive Stephanie Warnock. She is live at the rally in Metro Atlanta happening at the Civic Center. Steph, the demonstration started at 10 a.m. this morning. We saw people showing up bright and early. It's been underway for at least 30 minutes so far. What is the scene at the current moment?
Yeah, so Ariana, Dan, let me go ahead and show you what is happening here right now at the Atlanta Civic Center. A sea of protesters here and more people still arriving as they're walking through this front gate just behind us. And there's a lot of signs. There's a No Kings stage and there's people speaking right now. They say there's also going to be music. And this is where the demonstration is starting from 10 to 1 p.m. at the Civic Center. And then crowds here will be marching to the state capitol. We know that the protest is organized by the ACLU. We spoke to members of the ACLU here in Georgia this morning, and they say that they have a clear message that the people hold the power, not government leaders and not the Trump administration. We've also spoken to a few protesters out here this morning with their signs, their T-shirts, their hats, and they are saying the same thing. One person we spoke to says he's very unhappy with immigration policies right now. Another man, his face was painted red, white, and blue. He tells us that all he wants is the government he grew up with, and he says that is not the government he sees today. And we do want to mention that this is a non-violent, peaceful protest. Organizers tell me they are hoping it stays that way, Dan and Ariana, but if it doesn't, they do have 50 medics that are volunteering today, as well as a group of volunteer safety people. They say that they have been trained on de-escalation if it gets to that point.
And Seth, throughout the week, their message has always been this is a non-violent protest. Earlier in the morning, I saw you had the chance to speak with some of the safety organizers. Kind of break down what's their plan for today to ensure that this is focused on their message and not conflict.
Well, the lead of the safety team here, he tells me that they've been trained for hours on how to de-escalate situations, but like their approach, he said, is just to use their words and to promote kindness. He did say that back in June at the last No Kings protest, there were some counter protesters that arrived, including the Proud Boys. And so they say they have been trained and they are prepared just in case they have more counter protesters today. But again, they are hoping that things remain nonviolent. Also, the organizer today telling me that this is a very uplifting event. Like I said, the stage behind me, they're going to have some speakers, but also music. And so everyone I've spoken to are hoping for the same thing. Also, the lead of the medic volunteers said that what they're anticipating is maybe stepping in for dehydration, maybe some effects of heat, maybe some people possibly tripping at some point during the protest or maybe the march, but they're not anticipating anything more than that, guys.
And Seth, kind of walk me through some of the participants. I see people of all ages, all generation behind us. Really goes into what you were saying. It's about peace, it's about kindness, it's about community.
Yeah, so the organizers made it very clear that everyone here that is helping out with the event today, the No Kings protest, they are all volunteers. No one is getting a check today. The lead of the safety group of volunteers, he tells me that everyone is ready to be out, protect others, and stand up for what they all believe in, even if that means putting themselves in harm's way. And so that definitely is amazing to see. They say that today is about bringing people together. We're seeing older generations, we're seeing younger generations of Americans, and a group that I actually spoke to, 3 people, they told me they wanted to make it clear that they are pro-America, but they are not pro-Trump. And so they say today's all about democracy, and we can see the large crowd now gathered towards the stage here. And we're going to just keep talking to people out here this morning who are spending their Saturday here, voicing their opinions and their rights.
Yeah, that's right, Seth. And you see that as you were speaking, we saw young kids, we saw older Americans walking through and really participating in today's demonstration. That right there you see is the shot of the stage that Seth was speaking about. We know there will be a number of speakers taking to that stage. She mentioned there will also be music. They're going to take to that stage and then start the process of walking to the Capitol. So, Seth, right now it seems like the demonstration is just concentrated at the Civic Center at the current moment, right, Seth?
Yeah, that's right. So the gates opened before 10 a.m. The stage speakers began at 10. Now we're starting to hear some music. We're seeing flags, people getting very hyped up. But this is until 1 p.m. And then organizers say they will all start to form right here out on the street and then march to the state capitol. So this really is happening very early all through the afternoon. And this is something that they were handing out at the front gate. It says in bold, reminder, this is a peaceful demonstration. It says, do not fall for the trap. We also know ACLU had posted on their Facebook page a screen grab of what every American rights are. And they said to maybe save that as a lock screen on your cell phone, just in case things get a little rowdy and maybe you are approached by a police officer or even ICE here today, that you can show them what you have the right to do here during today's demonstration, guys.
All right, thank you, Seth. And we're going to show some video right now. We're going to take a look at the map. Last June, the No Kings protest. This was the first demonstration that this group, that this organization had. There was one right here in Georgia. There were several protests and similar demonstrations all across the country. And as organizers say, they say today's demonstration is really a direct response to what they call an escalating abuse of power by the Trump administration, accusing national leaders of acting more like rulers than public servants. The protest is part of the National Day of Action, with rallies planned in 150 other major cities across the country, Dan.
And as we look at this video from June a few months ago, going off memory, this was the No Kings protest you're seeing here. But then later that afternoon, there was an anti-ICE protest that took place on Chamblee-Tucker Road in DeKalb County. And that's actually where we saw some of the issues with law enforcement a little later that day, where they made some arrests. In fact, 8 people arrested that afternoon from that one protest, because they said the folks wouldn't move from the sidewalk onto the road, and they actually tried to march onto 285. So DeKalb County Police in that situation made some arrests. Mario Guevara, a journalist, a local journalist who was working out of here in Georgia, was infamously arrested at that event and later deported to El Salvador, which is why that event lingered for so long in this community, really reverberated around the world, too.
Yeah, but the main No Kings protest was in June, and that happened at the state capitol. And as you mentioned, that one was nonviolent.
Peaceful.
And, yes, and that's the message, as Seth said, they want to keep the mission at the forefront and not conflict and not violence. And we know the city of Atlanta did approve a permit for the demonstration so they can march to the Capitol and make sure that they have law enforcement. So we will have traffic impacts in the metro,
no doubt,
as this group is expected to march from the Atlanta Civic Center at the state capitol.
Yeah, so our Rachel Cox-Rosen has what you need to know if you're going to be heading out today. Do anticipate the roads being a little more crowded.
5 No Kings protests taking place Saturday morning and afternoon, so you could expect road impacts in all these different spots: Gainesville, East Cobb, Tucker, Atlanta, and Fayetteville. So let's start in Atlanta, where I do expect to see some heavy impacts on Piedmont Avenue, Ralph McGill Boulevard, and other side streets in the downtown area. So just use a lot of caution. Going to be large crowds, and police may be forced to block off roads depending on how the protests go. Same thing in Tucker. Their No Kings protest taking place on North Lake Festival at the North Lake Festival Shopping Center. So those impacts primarily going to be on La Vista Road, but other side streets in this area could be impacted as well. The third area I want to highlight is the East Cobb No Kings protest. You can expect impacts on Roswell Road and Johnson Ferry Road. And then again, sound like a broken record, but also on other side streets. So I would avoid driving in all of these areas throughout Saturday as these protests take place.
You know, a lot of planning goes into setting up for a large demonstration like this. Again, thousands expected here in Georgia. By some estimates, close to 5 million last time this took place nationwide in June.
Yeah, and demonstrators that we spoke to say that they won't let fear or power silence their fight for basic rights as they protest against the Trump administration and its policies.
11 Alive's Angelina Salcido says that law enforcement is ready and on standby to keep everybody safe.
We're building these signs with slogans about what it is that we need.
Preparing for the streets.
We demand defending democracy and the rights that we have right now that are being seized by the Trump administration.
Groups get ready to voice their concerns Saturday during the second round of No Kings protests.
Turnout is looking to surpass the last No Kings Day.
Addison Clapp, the organizer of the Party for Socialism and Liberation.
We're going to be in downtown Atlanta. We're going to flood the streets. It's going to be a very significant day all across the country.
40 rallies planned in Georgia. In Atlanta, city officials issued a permit and say they're working closely with organizers to keep everyone safe. It's the same in DeKalb County, with law enforcement distributing rules to keep protests peaceful, asking them not to march in the street without a permit or cover their faces and disregard commands from police. In June, DeKalb County's tactical team arrested several people after hundreds marched at an anti-ICE protest.
The suppression of the Chamblee-Tucker protest was to try to stop the movement, but clearly it's not stopped.
The goal tomorrow is to get their message across peacefully.
Whether it's against all of the policies that the Trump administration is putting across, none of that repression is going to scare us. We've not stopped organizing, and we're never going to stop organizing.
Angelina there mentioned 40 demonstrations taking place across Georgia today. Of course, we have the one in Atlanta going on right now, but there's a number of others as well, including in Gainesville, Marietta, Fayetteville, and Tucker. Some of those actually scheduled for later this afternoon. So this is not just a morning event, but an all-day thing when it comes to the Peach State.
Yeah, certainly. And, you know, according to the group's website, they're expecting the crowds to gather at these demonstrations all throughout the day into the afternoon. And let's take a look at the rally happening in downtown Atlanta. This is unfolding at the Atlanta Civic Center. This is the main rally happening here in Georgia. This is the main one in downtown Atlanta happening.
Yeah, in fact, the city of Atlanta just giving a permit days ago to allow these folks to assemble. They said that they host about 300 protests every year in Atlanta. So nothing new to the city. In fact, Atlanta has a rich history, really, when it comes to protesting. Go back to the civil rights era and even around 2020 with the George Floyd protest. A lot certainly changing in the 70 years since the Civil Rights era when it comes to assembling and your right to protest. In fact, we're going to be talking with a security analyst here in the next half hour about how you manage large-scale events like this from a law enforcement perspective. Of course, the goal to keep everything peaceful. You heard that from the organizers this morning. It's the same goal of law enforcement on the other side of things as well. And then a little later this morning, we're also going to be speaking with the Georgia Republican chairman, talking about their perspective of things, because we heard from House Speaker Mike Johnson this week, who said that this is the Hate America rally, and that's kind of the verbiage that we're hearing from many on the right.
Yeah, and we also heard from the Trump administration, the president calling the protests lawless. And this is all happening in the midst of a government shutdown. So it will be interesting to speak to that security analyst about how this plays into with the government shutdown, this mass demonstration, any federal law enforcement officers working, of course, without pay in the midst of this. But I do understand that state and city law enforcement will be involved in helping these demonstrators walk from the Civic Center to the state capitol. And we're seeing some of the same images and very similar signs that we saw at the demonstration back in June. We see balloons, we see people dressed up as a unicorn, we see the signs that people are holding an American flag. As Seth said, she spoke to one of those demonstrators, and he says he wants to make it clear that he is pro-American. So we're going to see a lot of interesting signs today. I saw when people were walking into the gates, probably around 9:30 this morning, they were handing out signs and flags. And that's what you typically see at a lot of these demonstrations that we cover. They're prepared. They really just want to make sure their message is shown. They want to hold these signs. They want to make sure they're letting people know that this is a democracy and this is their right to demonstrate and to protest. Right now, we are looking at the stage where we are expecting to hear from speakers throughout this demonstration. Before they start walking, we're expected to hear music at this demonstration. So it won't just all be about their message. It's about bringing this community together in this time with a central message, Dan.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said something similar this week, saying, we're a democracy in America. We have no kings, and said that this No Kings rally over the weekend is what America is all about. And you're seeing folks exercising their First Amendment right today with some of those American flags and signs getting their message across. Back in June, a lot of this was anti-ICE. We saw immigration raids really being at the forefront of things earlier this summer. And a lot has changed between June and now with what folks are focusing on. Ariana mentioned the government shutdown we're in the midst of right now. Government workers going on another week without pay. And you're also seeing the National Guard sent into cities across the country by the president, and some of these protesters taking issue with that. So it'll be interesting to see once they start speaking, they have the No King stage there, what kind of message they really hone in on. Is it going to be mostly anti-immigration? Is it going to be against some of those, what they perceive as an overreach by the Trump administration to send these troops into American cities? Or is it going to be a little bit of everything?
Yeah, and Dan, taking a broader scope, looking across the country, you mentioned about 5 million Americans showed up at the last protest that happened in June, but they're saying that today's rally is likely going to surpass the number of people that we saw show up for that rally. And they say they really want to see as many people come out to these demonstrations. They're trying to hold these rallies across the country at least 1 hour drive from any American. So any person that may want to participate, they have the option to. At least 2,500 individual rallies have been registered on the organization's website across the country. And Republicans, as we mentioned, we're going to hear from the GOP chairman. We want to hear their perspective on this because they're calling this a radical demonstration. So it'll be interesting to hear their perspective as these demonstrations play out across the day. And we really want to hear their perspective, of course, as we are going to hear from those speakers that will take the stage, because we've really been at the forefront of the government shutdown, hearing both sides really be vocal about where they stand. So it is a lot happening at this current moment when we are participating and watching this demonstration play out today.
Yeah, when we heard House Speaker Mike Johnson this week referring to it as the Hate America rally, he mentioned, saying today's going to bring in the Marxists, the socialists, and Antifa. But then you heard the organizer of the rally go on national news this week and said that if you actually say the name of the protest, no kings, the entire argument falls apart. So that was her rebuttal to some of Speaker Johnson's comments this week.
Yeah, and we're going to continue to have live coverage of these demonstrations all throughout the morning. In a moment, we're going to be able to listen to some of those speakers as they take the stage. And you're watching us on 11 Alive Plus right now. This is a stream that we will have running throughout the day so we can continue to follow these demonstrations and follow this demonstration as they will soon march to the Capitol later on this morning. Stick around. We'll have more of this coverage coming up after this break.
Hey, good Saturday morning. If you're just joining us on this October 18th, it is a No Kings rally across the country that we are following, and here in Georgia as well. It's the second mobilization effort by this organization. They first did it back in June with close to 2,000 or so demonstrations nationwide at that time. Today, they're expecting closer to 2,600 back in June. Crowd size is estimated at about 5 million nationwide. They are saying today may be the largest nationwide protests in American history.
Yeah, and this is one of the largest mobilizations, largest demonstrations that we have seen since President Trump took office. And the purpose and point of a lot of these demonstrations have been rallying against the Trump administration. And the No Kings was a theme orchestrated by a group called the 50501 movement. And it's a national movement made up of Americans. They say this is more so about democracy. It's about unchecked power, calling it authoritarian power grabs by the Trump administration. And the last No Kings protest, we saw it really focus around ICE raids, rallying against immigration policies by the current administration. And at this point, one of their main points that they will be demonstrating against is what they're saying, militarized forces going into U.S. cities across the country. We know we've seen National Guard troops go into Washington, D.C. We've seen the back and forth in the courts in regards to the Trump administration sending National Guard troops to Chicago,
Portland, Memphis.
Exactly.
Yeah, a number of cities. And the president will point to some of the success they've seen in D.C., saying that since we sent the troops in, crime is down. On the other side of the debate, though, you have folks who are saying, well, if you look at crime, it's actually been trending down for a while now and has nothing to do with the National Guard troops.
Yeah, and the group is saying the name No Kings behind that is America has no kings and the power belongs to the people. And they're saying that this theme likens Trump to the British monarchies that the founders rebelled against to the United States, which goes back to why they keep saying and making sure that this stays a peaceful rally, saying that this is their right to protest, and they will do so. And we've been seeing this crowd gather. That's our reporter, Stephanie Chanted. She has been out there all morning for us, and she's going to walk us through the event happening on the ground. We're also expected to walk with them to the Capitol. It's about a 1.5 mile walk from the Atlanta Civic Center.
Nice weather today, though.
Yeah.
75 degrees and sunny. We saw some folks out there with big things, a bottle of water handing out. They might be worried about dehydration and making sure folks don't faint, but I mean, they're looking at pretty nice weather, especially compared to what they had back in June. Back in June.
Yeah.
I think it actually even rained that day a little bit, if I'm recalling correctly. But Steph's been doing a great job gathering information and talking to people about what's bringing them out there today. I think one man told her that he just wants to see government as he remembers it when he was growing up.
And it's interesting to see that this is a demonstration of all generations, all backgrounds, seeing people participate and come out and hear what these speakers are going to say today. And speaking to the weather, Dan, they do have medics, and that could be one of the reasons why they say they want to make sure they have a group of medical professionals there for dehydration. They're going to walk, make sure if someone trips, they're there to help them. And they also have trained volunteers there to de-escalate situations.
Right.
They say they want to make sure the message is about unity and not conflict. And like I said, our reporter right there, Stephanie Chanted, she's been there on the ground with us this morning, talking to people to get more information, more background. And Steph, we are joining you right now as you've been there all morning. Who do you have to walk us through, some of the reasons he's there to demonstrate today?
Yeah, absolutely, Ariana. So we are here with someone that's participating in No Kings protest this Saturday. Tell us your name and who you're affiliated with.
My name is Miles, and I'm with the Party for Socialism and Liberation.
Tell me, Miles, what this stands for, what the party stands for.
Well, the party right now is standing for, against these attacks by Trump and the billionaire class. We see that across the board, they're attacking our immigrant brothers and sisters. They're attacking the black community. They're attacking the federal government, workers in the federal government. And so this is a moment right now where we need to stand together, we need to fight back, and we can win, because this is such a deeply unpopular program that Trump and the billionaires are executing. And so we see today an example of just the vitriol, disagreement and hate towards these, this attack. And so right now, we got thousands of people out in the streets today. We know that hundreds of cities across the United States, millions of people are out. So it's very clear, the people are against this, and the people are going to win.
Did you happen to participate in the No Kings protest in June? What was your experience like a couple months ago when you were walking to the Capitol?
Well, what I think is really exciting is that what we're seeing is that there are more layers of people that are here. You look at the demographics, it's becoming more diverse. It's also becoming larger, which is really important. This is what we need. We need a mass movement to be in opposition to Trump and the billionaires because of the unpopularity of their program. We're seeing that people are, they have agency and they're ready to fight back, and that's what's really important right now. So we need to continue to bridge these struggles, the immigrant rights struggle, the black struggle, and continue to build a cohesive, organized fight back. And it also includes getting organized, right? A general strike or a more organized approach by the working class is going to take organizations. And so that's why we're out here. We're talking with working class people who are fed up with this billionaire agenda that's taking from them, giving to the rich. And we recognize that in order to build that, we have to build organizations. And so for us, this is an opportunity to talk to people who are out in the streets, right? They're here, they're activated, and they want to get more engaged with something that's not just once every few months, but is more coherent, more cohesive.
So tell me, what do you think of the turnout today compared to back in June, and why is it so important for everyone to be here in person for a demonstration like today?
Yeah, the turnout today is so important because it gives momentum. It's actually showing people that they don't have to be scared, right? They want us to be scared, they want us to be isolated, but that's not the case. People are showing it right now, right here, that it's time to get involved. It's time to take to the streets, and it's time to demand, to defend our democratic and civil rights. And I think that this is really a great trend to see. This is really exciting to see. And we need to keep building, right? It can't just be every few months. We have to continue to get organized in our communities and really build a defense to fight back against this billionaire agenda.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for speaking with us, and enjoy the rest of the day. It's a long day ahead, right?
Looking forward to it.
Are you doing the march at 1 p.m.?
Oh, absolutely. We'll be there.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
But Ariana, yeah, so that's just one person of many that I've been speaking to this morning, and they all are on the same page as far as what they want to see change, their unhappiness with the current status of the government, President Trump's policies. They all have their signs, they all have their flags, they all have their T-shirts, and we're starting to hear a lot of the speakers on the No King stage just behind me, and it is a lot of people here. And like I said, at 1 p.m., that's when everyone here is supposed to go out into the street out front of the Atlanta Civic Center and march to the state capitol.
Seth, do you know if it's an organized speaker list up there on stage, or is it kind of an open mic for anybody?
So I believe they do have an organized list. They were handing out a sheet with a QR code that I need to scan so I can see exactly who is speaking up here. But so far, I've heard a woman speaking. She was shouting into the mic, "No kings, no kings." And people were cheering and rooting her on. And so it's definitely what the organizer explained earlier before it started as being very uplifting. We've been hearing music playing, people dancing and waving their flags in the crowds, and it's a lot of different ages, as Ariana pointed out, from the crowds we've been seeing so far. There's people here with their children, there's older generations. I spoke to a man, like I said, who was telling me his perspective, and that he really wants to see the government that he grew up with. We even see some people dancing right here outside of the front entrance. Seems to be they're playing their own music here on the road where the march will begin in a few hours. We're seeing, just endless signs, guys, this morning that people are making. One woman even buying her sign, and we're seeing people selling signs. And I do want to mention that there are volunteers that are working as medics as well as to ensure safety. They've been trained, they've been preparing for hours. There's water here, there's fruit, there's snacks for people if they need it. But yeah, we're starting to hear the music now continuing here on the stage. And so, yeah, there's a lot going on today, but the good thing is that it has remained non-violent and peaceful, and that is what ACLU and all the organizers have told me this morning. That is what they're hoping for, and that's what they're hoping it will continue as.
All right, thank you, Seth. We appreciate you for being on the ground and walking us through, giving us a real-time look at the demonstrations as they're playing out. All right, joining us now is Marcus Snipe, a former senior executive with the U.S. Secret Service who now leads global security operations for major events and facilities.
You know, he's worked law enforcement and intelligence agencies around the world, brings deep expertise in crisis management and counterterrorism. Marcus, it's great to have you today. Thank you for taking the time.
Well, it's good. Thank you guys for having me.
Marcus, the Department of Homeland Security this week said that it is concerned about the potential for violence at some of these demonstrations, and they're basing that on several events in the United States in 2025, as they put it. When they raise that kind of concern, Department of Homeland Security, does that trigger any kind of new protocol locally here in Atlanta, or are they just reinforcing what's already in place?
I think they're just reinforcing what's already in place. And we can talk about Atlanta specifically. Atlanta has hosted major events in the past. They just hosted the All-Star Game. They host big events all the time. And they have planned for this event. I mean, they didn't have the notification that they would have for like a Major League Baseball game or Super Bowl, et cetera. However, they had enough time, and they have a blueprint, for crisis management, for emergency management, and just for basic general crowd control that they always have, and they continue to update, and they continue to improve upon those after every event in the form of an after-action report. So the authorities there on the ground are pretty prepared. I have no doubt that they are.
Mm-hmm. And can you kind of walk us through some of the indicators that law enforcement tries to watch out for in real time when they are in the midst of shifting their posture? Because as of right now, we want to emphasize that the rally is nonviolent, but I'm pretty sure law enforcement is monitoring the situation.
Yes, it's what law enforcement just government officials and officials with the city and county and state, they want to keep this particular event, under control. Because once it gets out of control, then guess what? There's havoc and there's chaos. And the way they do that is, hey, they are able to funnel and have people that are part of this event in a particular area where they know, hey, these are known participants, right? And they kind of buffer off that zone so that the zone outside of that, hey, people like hanging around and who may not be interested in the actual event, they're noticed, right? Because they're not part of the actual event. They're away from the actual event. They're kind of lingering. You know, they're doing things that are kind of out of the norm, suspicious, and that's how they show up, and that's how they highlight themselves. Because the way law enforcement and the public officials set up these events is so that, hey, people that are going to enjoy or come to participate in this event, hey, they're in a particular zone, and anyone outside of that zone, okay, now we've got surveillance people watching, we've got police units out here, and so on and so forth, so that, hey, if they do spot an individual or individuals that don't seem like they're a part of that event, then they can take the appropriate action.
So many cities have real-time crime centers now where they can pretty much watch anything that's going on street level 24 hours a day. Are they utilizing the real-time crime centers? I mean, we have flock cameras here in Atlanta, in addition to maybe having folks on top of buildings, giving a bird's eye view of what's going on. Is it safe to say that they are watching every angle of every street today?
I think it's safe to say that. It's an extensive process. There are multitudes of surveillance. There are several tactics that law enforcement specifically is using for an event like this. Like you say, real-time cameras, counter surveillance. Just undercover police officers mixing in with the crowd. Intelligence reports from days ago that they're applying and running out and checking out right now, and now that this event started. There are a multitude of things that law enforcement's doing to monitor this, to see who's going to attend this event, to try to figure out, hey, if there's someone who's going to try to do something that's not, do something adverse, some bad actor out there, they're scraping all that. They're constantly scraping that. They'll scrape that after the event is over, and that's part of the after action process. So it just doesn't, it's just not the event itself, I guess what I'm trying to say. Here's the thing, these events happen, and the planning and the security starts before the event starts. It doesn't happen that day, doesn't happen that day before. This has been in place a couple of days before. I think once they got the notification, hey, it went into effect. They went back to the playbook. It's going on during the event, and it'll go on after the event. They'll have an after action. Hey, there'll be mistakes made, and law enforcement officials and state and government officials, they'll realize those mistakes because they put those plans together, and then they'll improve on that for the next time.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of plans, is that the reason why the city of Atlanta emphasized and made known that they did approve this permit, and made important why it is important to apply for a permit?
Yes. And the city and law enforcement, they don't want disruption. They don't want an incident. That's the last thing they want. They want people that say, hey, look, I want to sign up. I've got a permit to take on or to carry out this event. And they want them to be able to do that, without any obstacles, especially from law enforcement or local officials. And a step in that process is, yes, applying for that permit and letting, officials know that, hey, this is the event I plan, to hold. Because, the point is, law enforcement, county officials are more than happy and they're willing and they want to work with these organizers because they don't want any chaos. They don't want, incidents happening. They want to protect the general public, and that's their main concern is the general public, the people of Atlanta are going to attend this event. They don't want anything happening to them. They want this event to be as successful as the organizers do. So, yes, putting forth the effort to get that permit and sharing your plans with local officials, police departments, local law enforcement, that's only going to help your event.
Marcus, we had you on last June during the last No Kings protests, and everything went off without a hitch that day. It was very peaceful. Although on the day of those demonstrations, we saw the Minnesota lawmaker and her husband assassinated. And then in the months since then, we've seen Charlie Kirk, conservative activist, assassinated. I mean, I think it's safe to say the temperature has been raised in this country since you and I last spoke. What does that mean for how law enforcement approaches today compared to how they did back in June?
I think a lot more focus is being put on being proactive as opposed to being reactive. A lot more focus is being put on, hey, family members, social media chats, just general intelligence on what the wave is, what people are rallying, for or against. That's a great indicator of, hey, what people, how they feel and how they're going to act to a particular event. And that's a major indicator that law enforcement looks at when they're trying to be proactive. Hey, we want to get it right, or we want to prevent any bad things from happening. We want to hear about someone who's got this animosity towards a public official, and they want to thwart that, action before it actually happens. Because yes, there are bad actors out there. There are always going to be bad actors out there. But the thing is to be proactive and get ahead of those bad actors so that they can't harm the general public.
And we know that state and local law enforcement are involved in the planning of this. Will the government, or does the government shutdown as far as federal agencies play a factor into planning? Is planning crippled because we have law enforcement working, some even without pay at this point?
Yeah, I mean, law enforcement, as you all know, especially federal law enforcement, and I know this well, being a former federal law enforcement official, yes, they're not getting paid, or there's a government shutdown in effect right now, but hey, they're still showing up and they're still doing their job. They're essential personnel, and they'll show up and they'll do their job. There's a certain these law enforcement, the police officers and these federal agents, they really feel that they have a mission. So do the local police departments and local officials that are trying to keep people safe, and no one wants that to happen. No one wants a bad thing to happen on their watch, whether or not they're getting paid or not. I can't. People talk about, hey, the government shut down these law enforcement agents and they're not getting paid right now. But hey, I can tell you right now, there's, even while they're getting paid, there's several hours that they work that they don't get paid anyway, right? So I think they're dedicated to the service that they're providing. They're dedicated to their mission, and I don't think you'll see any lapse because of what's going on with Congress and politics.
Marcus, it's almost the job of everybody who's going to be out there today, not just law enforcement, to ensure that the day ends peacefully and that there's safety ensured for everybody there. I believe back in June, the only arrests we saw here locally were for folks obstructing the roadway. 8 arrests were made at that time. Is there anything else that you would want protesters to know as they head out today that they should do to keep both them, their neighbors, police safe, and have everybody get home today okay?
On your last report before you came to me, your reporter was talking about safety and things that the organizers are doing. But hey, just I think a lot of people don't think about their own safety and health concerns when you're talking about a crowded event, people standing up for a long amount of time. Just simple things like water, people becoming dehydrated, people standing for a long time. Just watching out for, hey, other individuals. I think one of the things I've seen when it comes to large events, yes, the event goes off without a hitch. It's a beautiful day, but hey, when you pack in more than 100 people in one space, it gets very, very warm. You know, everybody's not in the best condition when it comes to health. So people need to look out for that and be prepared for that, and have a plan for, hey, if I'm with someone and they need, you know, medical help, if there's a medical emergency, hey, how am I going to accomplish that? And hey, keep an eye out for, know where your local law enforcement, you know, officials are. Hey, if I need to contact them immediately, hey, I know where they're stationed. I know where I can go. Kind of plan that out before you get there, because that's going to make, you know, things a lot easier and flow a lot better for you if there is an emergency, because you kind of have a plan together already.
That is important. I remember it was a day of action for John Lewis's birthday. We were at a senior community, and an older citizen, she passed out, and the fire department had to respond there on the scene. So we do expect that to happen, which is why they have medical professionals there to be there on standby. And also, we have the No Kings protest happening in Metro Atlanta, and also happening a little further away. You have Spell House Homecoming. So 2 large gatherings happening in the city. How does law enforcement coordinate both events to ensure that both have coverage, both go on safely at this point?
Yeah, you know, like I said, the city is planned. The city and local law enforcement, they've planned for this before it happened, like a week, 2 weeks, probably longer, especially for the events like a homecoming. They know that event's coming. They know what that event looks like. They've covered it before. They know what the resources. They know the resources they need. They've you know, had after action, you know, sessions after the last event, so they know kind of what, hey, this is what I need for this event. An event like, you know, No King's Day that comes along within that. Hey, that's a new event. They planned for that. There's a blueprint for that, but the homecoming event's already in the planning. It's been planned before. They know how many officers they need. They know the resources they need. They know how to get additional resources if they need it, because they've been in that situation before. So I don't think there will be any lapse of personnel or anything that's shortened because there are more than one event happening in the city at one time. I mean, that happens all the time. You could have an Atlanta Braves game, you know, at the beginning of the football season, right? 2 major events, 2 different parts of town, you know, and those resources are there to support both of them.
Well, the Braves not around anymore, but we do have the Hawks and the Falcons right now. So still plenty of events going on. And you know, Marcus, kind of to your point, Atlanta has such a rich history of protests and public demonstrations. I mean, it goes back to the civil rights era and some of the sit-ins and marches we saw then. And then even just 4 or 5 years ago during the height of the George Floyd protest. I'm curious to know, do you think policing these events has gotten easier over these years when it comes to technology? I mean, on the one side, you have social media that can help easily mobilize counter-protesters and get them to locations quickly. But then maybe from the law enforcement perspective, you have these real-time crime centers that we talked about. Has it made the job easier or harder for police?
I don't think it'll ever make it easier. I don't think you ever hear a law enforcement official or person say, hey, the job's easier. The job gets more challenging because as, you know, law enforcement adopts new technology, so do the bad actors, right? So they have advanced technology. They understand technology. They can research to a certain extent what technology law enforcement's using and try to counter that, right? So the job becomes more challenging. I would never say it becomes easier because it doesn't, because there's always something that you can improve upon. Even after this event can go off, you know, without a hitch, but there's going to be something that needs to be improved upon. So in that regard, the job never gets easier. You know, there's always a challenge. There's always a challenge you're trying to fix. Now, I know there's no such thing as perfection, but, you know, I think all these officials, especially in Atlanta, having worked in Atlanta, having started in Atlanta, my federal career in Atlanta, I know these officials are committed to the general public and the citizens of Atlanta. And I think they're constantly looking to improve. But to answer your question, no, it doesn't get easier. It just gets more challenging.
And Marcus, before you go, for people not attending these protests, just going to go about their Saturday as normal, traffic is going to be impacted by this. Can you kind of walk us through what people can expect that are not attending these events as they try to make it through the metro? Because we know this group is going to go from the Civic Center to the Capitol, and people really want to know what area should they avoid in addition to the normal Saturday traffic that we already have to work our way through on a Saturday.
Yeah, I tell people that, hey, if you know the area that's going to be affected, like, hey, there are going to be protests in this area. I mean, unless you absolutely have to go down there, or you want to participate. I would avoid the area for that length of time. Because what you're doing is, even though, hey, streets may be open, but traffic may be snarled, you're still putting, stress, and you're putting an undue burden on the people that are trying to keep this event moving and organized, right? And just having, people that are unsure where they're going, they get lost. They're trying to they're twisted. I can't go this way. I'm used to going that way. Just adds to that. So the advice I would give is, hey, if you can avoid the area, if you're not participating in that particular event, I would do that for that length of time. It just makes everybody's life just a little bit easier during those couple hours.
That's Marcus Snipe. A fascinating conversation with you today on another day of No Kings protest. He has experience with the Secret Service. He has experience here in Atlanta, and he really helped us make sense of how law enforcement is handling today. Marcus, we appreciate you being here.
Always glad. I was glad to be a part. Thanks.
Thank you, Marcus. And we're going to continue this coverage as the No Kings protest, this demonstration, continue to play out throughout the day. Stay with us here on 11 Alive. Plus, we'll have more coverage coming up after this break. Stick around.
Be with you on this Saturday morning. We continue to cover the No Kings protests, not just here across Georgia and Metro Atlanta, but also nationwide. About 2,600 registered locations today for these protests.
Yeah, the last No Kings protests played out in June here in Metro Atlanta. Across the country, the crowds were counted at least 5 million people, and they are predicting this to be one of the larger protests compared to the last one, to the first one. Now, as Dan mentioned, there are protests happening across the country, several in the metro area. You have Gainesville, Marietta, Atlanta, Fayetteville, and Tucker. You also have rallies happening in Smyrna, Fayetteville, Swanee, Georgia. And these demonstrations are playing out throughout the day, some of them going from 11 to 2 a.m. The one here in Metro Atlanta started at 10 a.m. They're going to march to the state capitol starting at 1 p.m.
And then some of those other ones starting a little later this afternoon, I believe, 1, 2 o'clock or so.
Yeah, that's correct. They are going to have those protests, some starting at 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. That one is in Swanee. Yeah. The one in Chamblee, that one is starting at 2 p.m. and that one is expected to go until 6:30 p.m. And the one in Marietta is going from 2 to 4 p.m. So they're scattered throughout the day, but pretty much happening throughout the course of our Saturday.
Yeah, and some large cities also hosting demonstrations as we speak right now, not just in Atlanta. This is a live look from the nation's capital. In fact, you see Capitol Hill there in the distance. There is a stage set up and a couple people already arriving. Not quite sure exactly what time they begin there, but D.C. kind of at the center of all of this. Not only is it, of course, the location of the White House, all of the nation's political leaders, but also they've sent the National Guard into Washington, D.C. in recent weeks. President Trump said to crack down on crime, and that is one reason why many people today taking to the streets.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this rally in D.C., it is pretty much a central point of everything that's been playing out over the course of the Trump administration. Some of the reasons these demonstrators say they are participating today. Many saying they are marching due to the fact that the president is sending National Guard troops to different cities across the country. Some marching in regard to immigration, pointing to ICE raids. Yeah. Some marching for the CDC workers who were laid out. I saw some of those signs saying stand for the CDC. People wanting America to look like the government that they grew up on. I saw signs saying be kind. Mm-hmm. And D.C. is no stranger to demonstrations and protests. At my time working at the White House, there were demonstrations playing out in the front of the White House all throughout the week. Many demonstrations always happening on the weekend. And what's different about D.C., a lot of the law enforcement involved are federal agencies, and many of those law enforcement officers are working today without pay because of the government shutdown.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And it's something that they clearly are no stranger to, but as you mentioned, now they're doing it without a paycheck. What's interesting is what may be a focal point in a city like D.C., perhaps there it's going to be the National Guard. Same with Portland, Chicago, Memphis. You might hear different protests here in Atlanta. You might hear more CDC protests, more ICE immigration protests. And in Hollywood, Florida, where there's also a large demonstration going on right now, it may also be more focused on anti-ICE. If we can take a live look from Hollywood right now, we know it's about an hour away from Mar-a-Lago, where the president actually spending his time this weekend, and the population there in Hollywood, Florida, about 40% Hispanic. So just kind of interesting to see as we're going to take a live look at different cities throughout the country today, what they are all protesting and if there's a louder message in one city versus another.
Yeah, and the different messages that we will hear coming out of each city. A lot of the times you see these demonstrations happening in the nation's capital are issues that are not top of mind for many Americans. I went home one weekend and we saw people demonstrating in regards to Argentina. So various messages and events happening that's not top of mind for America. So we'll be following the messaging and the reason why many people are marching today. And we're going to go out live to our Stefan Chanted, who has been live at the Atlanta Civic Center. That's the demonstration, the larger demonstration happening in Georgia and Metro Atlanta. And Steph, we've been seeing a number of signs, even costumes. You have a crab behind you right now.
Yeah, also a crowd in front of me. So many protesters here at the Atlanta Civic Center for the No Kings protests. Yeah, you're hearing the crowd screaming behind me. There's a stage right now with some speakers, music going, and a lot of signs, flags, T-shirts, and hats. Everyone voicing their frustrations, at least everyone I've spoken to so far this morning, on the status of the government, how things are going, and also how President Trump is handling policies here in our country. And this morning right now we are joined with two protesters, both actually nurses, and they've got signs. Well, your sign says, "We cannot bear a dictator traitor." Tell me your name and then tell me why you're here today.
My name is Mitzi. I'm 68, and I don't want to live in a country with a dictator. This is America. We're supposed to be free. I want to be free. I care deeply about health care, especially women's health care in Georgia. Women are dying in pregnancy. I have patients that are vulnerable. They have diabetes, hypertension, and if they were to get pregnant, it could be a serious tragedy. So I'm here because I care about everybody. I care about other people.
Tell me, in your career, in your industry that you work in healthcare, how have you seen things, I guess, change over the last year with different policies under Trump administration?
Well, of course, we can't count on the CDC at all for anything, but a lot of my patients have Ambetter, which is Obamacare, and I expect for them to possibly lose their health care. Also, the very first executive order that was put out by our dictator actually defunded the clinic that I work at, and we were able, because of an injunction, to continue to operate. I work for a federally qualified health care center, which sees uninsured people, and we are very concerned that we will eventually get cut.
And then that will impact, of course, the patients that you see day to day.
Absolutely. The uninsured people who we see at a sliding fee scale will have no coverage at all. They will have no health care except for the emergency room.
So what are your words right now that you want to make clear to our government officials, to the president?
I don't know that there's anything we can say to them, but what I want to say to everybody out here is, you better go vote. You better vote in the midterms, because that's going to be our only chance to reverse this.
Thank you. And then you have a friend here, and you also are holding a sign. Tell me about your sign and what it says, what it means.
Well, it is No Kings. This is from Carl the Dungeon Crawler series that's on the Times bestseller list. And basically it is alien corporate entities have invaded the earth, and people are brought down to the dungeon to basically entertain the rich. And it just, nowadays it just seems like what really will make the people better, like food, health care, jobs, everything is going by the wayside with no oversight, that it's just one man's decisions. And what's going for is ballrooms and triumphant arches and giving away money to foreign countries when our people are getting unpaid furlough because they can't get it together to get our government back on track, not even to negotiate and help our people.
Why was it so important for you to come out here this Saturday? I don't know if you were participating in the previous No Kings protest in June, but why did you want to come here and spend your Saturday here?
Well, we were here, and we were also in Macon a couple of times and Warner Robins, because we're from middle Georgia and have driven up. But I mean, we have to speak out. I mean, we're just watching things deteriorate and basically our country becoming, a dictatorship without at least trying to speak out and turn it around and let people know they are not alone. There's more of us than there are the 1% that are the billionaires, that are the ones that are benefiting from all of the changes that are going on. It's corruption. We need to clean the pond.
Now, this is just one protest that's happening all over the country today. What are your hopes that people coming out, showing up like here, how are you hoping that will impact leadership?
I'm just hoping that they will see that this is not what our country needs to do. This is not the direction our country needs to go. We're going to be celebrating 250 years, and why would we ruin it all and turn it into like a banana republic, aspiring to all the dictators of the world? I mean, we're a free people. That's what we were founded on, and that's what we need to stand up for, and letting everybody know they are not alone. It touches everybody, whether you're a child who's going to do without your Medicaid, your seniors, the federal employees, the veterans. I mean, nobody is going to be untouched. And if they can see that we need to speak up, and maybe the people who still care about an election will realize that this is not the popular thing to do.
No, I want to ask both of you ladies, can you tell me your thoughts?
But we appreciate the live interview bringing us perspective from all the folks in attendance at today's event.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing from the people on the ground because oftentimes we hear from lawmakers, you know, we hear their point of view, and it's always interesting to hear the point of real people and why they are, you know, so encouraged to come out and demonstrate in their messaging, you know, hearing from the woman dressed as a bear saying we can't bear another dictator, talking about, you know, her struggle as a nurse and the issues that she's seeing from her patients, the fact that they may not, you know, receive coverage. So hearing their perspective, their point of view is always interesting, hearing these real life issues for people.
You know, it's not just here in Atlanta. We are seeing these protests nationwide today, including in Nashville, Tennessee, Music City. This is a live look where they are hosting their No Kings rally right now. Nashville is a blue city in a red state, and it's also been at the center of recent debate, the state has, because the National Guard troops have recently been sent into Memphis at the support of the president and at the direction of Governor Bill Lee. And now, in fact, the governor facing a recent lawsuit to keep the National Guard troops out of Memphis, but Nashville, the home of the governor's mansion. In fact, I used to live there and I worked there for a couple of years. I'm trying to see if I can figure out where this is. I'm guessing
It's
this
at the
likely
Capitol.
that's at the Capitol.
Yes,
So yeah, governor's mansion right there on the grounds of the Tennessee Capitol, rather, there in Nashville. And you see the protesters taking to the microphone. Is there any way we can listen in to see what they are saying in Nashville? Let's see if we can get some audio.
Okay. And some of the messaging coming out of Nashville, according to our NBC affiliate, some of the reasons why these people are activating and mobilizing today, they point to gun reform, environmental protections, and education. Those are just some of the issues that are top of mind for people who are living in Nashville. And speaking to the point you said, Dan, Nashville is a blue city, and the NBC affiliate actually spoke with someone who was a registered Republican. And he said that all his life that he's voted Republican, and he says he is disappointed and ashamed of where his party is today. So we want to hear from both sides of the issue. We want to hear from both parties as we are watching these demonstrations, the No Kings demonstrations play out across the country. Many say this is against the Trump administration. You know,
somebody else on the other side of this today, Georgia GOP Chair Josh McCoon, joining us live. Josh, really appreciate sharing another side of this perspective today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the Trump administration, they have been outspoken as we were planning and looking to today, the president calling today's demonstrations lawless. Speak to that. What is the viewpoint of Republicans for these demonstrations and what they think about some of the messaging that's coming out of participants today?
Well, you know, today is day 18 of the government being shut down. Senator Ossoff, I saw Senator Warnock was on the stage a little while ago. They voted 9 times to keep the government closed. And I think these protests are really to distract from the Democrats' unwillingness to get the government back open. You know, a lot of the rhetoric you hear is just fundamentally dishonest. People have not lost any constitutional rights over the last 10 months. What we've seen in this country is historic passage of tax reform, the release of all the remaining living hostages in Israel, the beginnings of a real peace in the Middle East. This president is winning on so many different fronts, and Democrats are desperate to stop his momentum. And that's really what today is all about.
And Josh, the point of Democrats to keep the government shut down, they want Republicans to come to the table in regards to the Affordable Care Act subsidies. They want conversation in regards to that. And we heard from a nurse who says that her patients are afraid that they'll lose their coverage. And Republicans, they say, reopen the government and we'll talk about this at a different point. But we know open enrollment is coming up for a lot of people. Do you think now is the time to have this conversation about health care?
Look, I think that, you know, agreeing to spend an additional $1.5 trillion in new spending, which is what Democrats are proposing, is not responsible in a country facing a $38 trillion debt and a $1.7 trillion a year budget deficit. These subsidies to make unaffordable Obamacare policies affordable were meant to be temporary. They were meant to be a temporary way to handle COVID. Obamacare hasn't worked. It hasn't worked since its inception. And that's why the Democrats are desperate to keep these taxpayer-funded subsidies in place, because the only way most people can afford these things is for the taxpayer to borrow against our children and our grandchildren's future. And so we absolutely need to find a way forward on health care, but simply kicking the can down the road and running up more debt is not the answer. We need to get the government back open. We need to get responsible policymakers to the table to resolve these and other pressing issues.
Chairman McCune, we heard from House Speaker Mike Johnson yesterday as he discussed the government shutdown, saying, look, I don't want to be here any more than you want to be here as we head into another week of the shutdown. But he also addressed the No Kings protests that we are obviously taking live this morning. He called it the Hate America rally. Do you think that's what it is? Is that fair to say?
They're fundamentally two different views of America increasingly between the political parties. And I'm sad to say that. Democrats generally view America as the villain in world history. If you talk about our founding, if you talk about our intervention in around the world, they view all these things very negatively. American exceptionalism, American global leadership. Republicans are unashamed in being proud of our country, proud of the role this country has played, not only for the people of our nation, but people all over the world who have benefited from American leadership. And so you have this sort of rewriting of American history, and frankly, in a lot of cases, simply ignorance about our history. I mean, I heard some people earlier saying that their rights were being taken away as they are in the midst of protesting and exercising their First Amendment rights. So it's just, it's very disappointing. And I agree with Speaker Johnson.
Mm-hmm. Well, you speak about Republicans being proud of to say that they are American, but during these demonstrations, we see a lot of people holding American flags, and they say they want America to be what they remember growing up. What would you say to that, to the fact that we are seeing people holding American flags at this demonstration happening right here in Metro Atlanta?
I'd love for them to tell me what they mean by saying they want to live in the America they were living in growing up. You know, we have a country, when this president came in this January, where we had no effective control over our borders and ports of entry. Illegal aliens were not only coming across the border and taking jobs from Americans, they were being exploited. We were seeing human trafficking, terrible things happening because we had no effective control of our borders and ports of entry. President Biden said, oh, we've got to have a law. Well, President Trump came in, took executive action, and border encounters have dropped something like 90%. I mean, that problem was resolved almost overnight by his leadership. You know, we're living in a time right now of economic growth. We don't have American military intervention going on all over the world. You know, the president has worked very hard to bring peace to the Middle East. He's working right now as the Democrats give political speeches at these rallies. He's working to bring peace to Ukraine. This president has done so much for our country, and it's just hard for me to see what people mean when they're saying that their rights are being taken away, because I just don't see that.
Well, you know, we have seen what I think many people would say are wins for the president, including the Gaza peace deal this week, including stock market near record highs, interest rates likely going down soon. But then on the other side of things, you see members of the press kicked out of the Pentagon this week. And you see the U.S. forces stepping up attacks on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean that, by the way, senators on both sides of the aisle are taking issue with. Can you see why some folks would have an issue with the way things are headed right now?
So let me talk about the drug issue first. I know personally, and I bet y'all do too, a family member or a friend who has been personally impacted by fentanyl flooding into this country. President Trump spent the entire campaign talking about how dangerous it was, alongside the immigration issue of illegal drugs flowing into our country and killing our young people, millions of people who have been killed by fentanyl-laced drugs. So I think the president is absolutely right and within his authority to do what it takes when it comes to interdiction to prevent these cartels from poisoning our children. And I think most Americans agree with that. When it comes to press access at the Pentagon and making sure that, you know, national security is paramount, obviously you've got to balance the interest of a free press and the interest of national security. No one kicked the reporters out. the reporters decided they didn't want to go along with new ground rules that the administration was asking for the privilege of being able to report from the Pentagon. Reasonable people can disagree about that, but that's not an abridgment of the free press. It's not preventing the press from doing their job. So again, I think there's a lot of overheated rhetoric out there, again, to try to distract from the very real victories this president is achieving every single day. I don't think anyone believed in January that we would have largely resolved the illegal immigration issue and that we would see at least the beginnings of a peace in Israel and Gaza. And this president has done it, and he's done it in less than a year. And those are just the things that people are really paying attention to. The big, beautiful bill, the biggest tax relief for ordinary Americans in my lifetime. I mean, just win after win after win. And unfortunately, the Democrats are so upset. They voted for the very same CR in March that Republicans proposed for this 7-week period while everybody could get around the table and come up with a more global budget deal. The reason they shut the government down is they know they are losing the argument. And they're desperate to try to turn this narrative around and try to blame the president for what's going on. But the American people are sharp, and they can watch every day as Senator Thune puts that clean CR on the table over and over again, and John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock vote against opening the government so they can show up to these rallies and tell lies about President Trump.
What would you say to Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene out of Georgia saying, that the party needs to come and have a discussion about health care? What is the Republican plan for health care?
So look, I think everybody agrees that we need to make sure Americans have access to health care. I lost my mother to pancreatic cancer. I know what it's like to have a loved one need access to health care, a lot of health care, and what it is to try to navigate through that process. I think that we don't make good policy by having an 11th hour agreement to keep the government open. I think the way we make good policy is by having a smart and reasoned conversation about how to do it. And frankly, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution. That was why most Republicans opposed this idea of Obamacare, because what's right for California may not be right for Georgia, may not be right for Rhode Island. Trying to let this get to a more local level would do a lot to solve the problem. And getting the federal government out of it would likely reduce costs for people. So we need to have an honest conversation about it and stop using the issue of health care or holding people's health care hostage in order to score political points.
Can you speak further by what do you mean by not the federal government being involved and more of the state government being involved? Because a lot of these state agencies are bogged down because so many people are trying to get access to health care. Can you kind of walk us through, what do you mean by that?
Sure, you're talking about the exchanges that are made available for people to buy Obamacare. What I'm talking about is when you have thousands of pages of federal laws and regulations governing how some national marketplace is going to work, that is much less efficient than if you simply said to the states, we're going to take the current money that's available and make it available to Georgia and let Georgia do this. I mean, Governor Kemp has been working on this and has gotten a waiver, and we're making progress with Georgia's version, but we really need more autonomy at the state level. So you're right. The exchanges and Obamacare, that process is a convoluted process. It's an attempt to create a one-size-fits-all solution in a country of 350 million people. What we need is to let the states do what they do well, which is to innovate for the populations in their states. The demographics are different. The ages are different of the population. The healthcare issues affecting the populations are different. So let the states do that, or let the states band together and do it. But give people more flexibility to come up with solutions that make sense, that get closer to the people, instead of folks in Washington, D.C. trying to map out a plan that's not ever going to solve for 350 million people.
And as we head into midterms, what do you want the messaging to be from the Republican Party so we do have unity and we see less of these demonstrations so us as Americans can all be together and move forward as we head into a pivotal time? We're going to have the governor's race coming up next year. We have the senator's race really heating up over the last few months. What would you like to see that messaging be?
Well, here in Georgia, we just were ranked for the 12th year in a row the best state to do business. And that's not an accident that has come along with united Republican control of Georgia state government. We've kept taxes low and we've cut taxes. We've made it easier to start businesses and grow businesses in Georgia. We've been very friendly to the small business owner, that person that maybe they want to break away from their 9-to-5 job and start their own company. And I think the people of Georgia are going to reward that next year. We need to remind them of what we've accomplished on their behalf over these last 12 years or so. But I'm very bullish on that messaging. On the federal level, it's what we've been talking about this morning, right? It's about unprecedented tax relief for the American people that, as you mentioned, has resulted in record highs in stock exchanges. But more importantly, it's meant better quality jobs, higher wage jobs. The president has announced hundreds of billions, if not now into the trillions, in direct foreign investment in this country over the last 10 months that are going to create jobs. We've seen over in Pooler, the Hyundai EV plant, they have made expansion announcements. So the message for Republicans needs to be, we've done what we promised. We have grown the economy. We've made it easier for you to find a job. We have dealt with a lot of these very thorny issues around immigration that the president talked about. We're delivering on our promises for the American people. And if you give us 2 more years, we're going to continue to move America forward and continue to make it great again.
If you're just tuning in, this is Georgia GOP Chair Josh McCoon joining us on the day of the No Kings protests. You know, Josh, last time we saw these protests in Atlanta, it was back in mid-June. And since then, we've seen the assassination of a Minnesota lawmaker and her husband. And we saw the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. The temperature's been raised in this country since June, since the last No Kings protest. I'm just curious your thoughts on where we find ourselves as a country when it comes to political polarization and what responsibility both parties share when it comes to lowering that temperature and keeping the debate constructive.
Yeah, so I think it starts with being frank. And I've certainly tried to do that with y'all this morning about the positions without being engaging in dehumanization of your political opposition. Because when you begin to take away somebody's humanity, that's when somebody thinks, well, it's okay for me to hurt this person or do something worse. I was horrified by the killings in Minnesota, released a statement the very same day. As a former state legislator, it hits very close to me what happened there. I did not know them personally. Charlie Kirk was a friend of mine who I knew quite well. And to see that happen was deeply affecting to me. And again, I think just today at today's protest, I've seen signs with swastikas. I've seen people calling Republicans Nazis and fascists. And I'm not saying it's all one side or the other, but there's a lot of that rhetoric that comes from the left. And that is irresponsible because it inspires people to do terrible things. So if we want to disagree on the issues, let's disagree on the issues. We can disagree passionately, but let's be very, very careful about saying things that we know are not true to try to strip away someone's humanity.
Well, then if we know it to not be true, why are we calling it the Hate America rally? Why are some on the right calling it the Hate America rally? Is that taking it too far?
Look, I think that if you listen to what is being said, it is hard not to describe. It's hard to find the right words to describe what's going on. I think that there is a mindset, and it's a mindset that's inculcated in college and university campuses around this country, that there's something profoundly wrong with America, that America is the villain of world history, that it's not the hero of world history, and that's fine. You're free to have that point of view. This is a free country, but I think we're also free to call that point of view what it is. When you compare somebody in the opposite political party to folks that were responsible for the greatest genocide in world history, that's beyond the pale. That is wildly irresponsible. And it is the sort of thing that inspires the political violence you're asking me about.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to continue to watch and follow these protests as they play out and just hear some of the messaging from some of the people that are participating. But we really appreciate you, Josh, for coming on and speaking to some of the issues that we are hearing from these people on the ground to kind of get a viewpoint from the other side. So we definitely appreciate your perspective today, Josh.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you for the time.
And once again, we are following coverage of the No Kings protests as they are playing out all across the country. We've been following the protests closely that is happening at the Civic Center, one of the largest rallies happening here in Georgia. We've been following this coverage since that rally started at 10 a.m. this morning.
And we're going to have another live look from the Atlanta Civic Center where the protest continues right after this short break.
And we are following live coverage of No Kings protests as they are playing out all across the nation. We've been taking you to Buffalo, Florida, Washington, D.C., and most importantly, here in Metro Atlanta, one happening at the Civic Center at this moment.
Yeah, in fact, we're going to take a live look from there right now. And this is actually in Buffalo, New York, because as we mentioned, these are happening across the nation. 2,600 registered events today for the No Kings protests. And let's see if we can listen in to Buffalo, New York.
And I'm glad I came. So, yes, that's why I'm here.
Have you seen other ones and maybe it was like that? Maybe was there a final point that got you out here today?
This year, just the last few months, I'm just over it. I'm tired of being mad. I actually lost my job because of...
Okay.
Tired of being mad is what she said. And we're hearing that from a lot of folks who are deciding to take to the streets today.
Yeah, and we've been talking to people here on the ground, hearing some of the issues that they're passionate about, drawing them out to participate in today's demonstrations. We heard from one lady who was a nurse pointing to the issue of health care, which is the main point of Democrats for keeping the government shut down, wanting Republicans to come to the table with extending health care subsidies in the spending plan, talking to people who... All right, we're going to go to the stage happening in Metro Atlanta, hearing some of people talk about, you know, they were impacted by the CDC layoff, people rallying against immigration raids. That was one of the main points of the first No Kings protest that happened in June.
And by the way, that one peaceful, very peaceful throughout the day. Thousands of people showing up, though later that day there was a second protest over on Chamblee-Tucker Road in DeKalb County. That did end with a few arrests, with folks refusing to leave the street. So police led some people away in handcuffs. Also led away in handcuffs that day was Georgia journalist Mario Guevara, who was detained, kept in ICE custody for months, and actually just deported to El Salvador this month.
Yeah, as of recently. And we actually had the chance to speak to him once he was deported and back in El Salvador. We're going to hear from him in just a moment, but we want to walk you through some of the speakers also that we had, that we will hear from during today's demonstrations. Andrea Young of the ACLU of Georgia, Dom Kelly, New Disabled South, Mark Peterson, Common Defense. We're going to hear from Stacey Abrams, of course, Georgia Conservation Voters. We're going to hear from Georgia Poor People's Campaign, Union of Southern Service Workers, Georgia Equality. And right now we're going to hear from Stacey Abrams, who is right now taking the stage at the rally in Metro Atlanta, if we can listen in. To get her audio so we can hear what she's saying as she is addressing the crowd at the Civic Center.
Okay. Unite to protect us, just in case universities try to teach us, just in case protesters try to show up and remind us of who we are. They go after step 8. They try to break civil society because they're preparing us for step 9. And step 9 is when they start to normalize violence. You see, I believe in a non-violent revolution because it works. It is the only thing that has ever truly consistently worked. But instead of that, what they want us to do is believe that we're in danger if we speak up, that we're in danger if we aggregate, that if we assemble like the First Amendment tells us we can, that there's a problem. And so we have a paramilitary called ICE that's breaking into houses and arresting people, kidnapping folks off the streets. We have the National Guard occupying our country, occupying our cities. We have a military occupation of Washington, D.C. And if we heard that on the news anywhere else, we would be up in arms. And yet here in America, we're supposed to just take it as normal. We're supposed to believe that it's okay that we have the military invasion of Portland and Chicago, of Memphis, and of L.A. We're supposed to believe that it's normal to have a secret mass police roaming the streets of America. That's not normal. That's intentional. Because what they want us to do is to not notice that they've gotten to step 10. And the step 10 is when we end democracy for everyone. That's why Texas is redrawing its map. That's why Missouri redrew its map. That's why Georgia purged 400,000 people from its rolls. That's why they're trying to gut the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Because they want to break democracy forever. We're going to have elections. Russia has elections. Turkey has elections. Venezuela has elections. But if they already know who's going to win, what's the point of showing up? Their destination is to take our country from us. And if there are 10 steps to autocracy and 10 steps to authoritarianism, Atlanta, I'm here to tell you there are 10 steps to freedom and power. That's what we're here for. There are 10 steps to freedom and to power, to health care for all. There are 10 steps to protecting our patriots. There are 10 steps to protecting our democracy. There are 10 steps to protecting our right to control our bodies and control our futures and control our minds. We've got to commit, say commit. We've got to share, say share. We have got to organize, say organize. We've got to mobilize, say mobilize. We've got to litigate, say litigate. We have got to disrupt, say disrupt. We have got to deny them the ability to take our language, say deny. We have got to engage, say engage. We have got to elect, say elect. And when we get those 9 steps done, we are going to demand the nation we deserve. Say demand. Say demand. We demand our freedom. We demand our power. We demand our freedom. We demand our power. We demand our freedom. We demand our power. We've got 10 steps to get there. 10 steps to get where we need to be. And it's going to take every one of us walking those steps together. We don't all have to do the same thing, but we've all got to do something. And if we take these 10 steps, if we do this work, then we will claim the destination of pluralism. We will claim the destination of democracy. And we will claim the destination of justice. And we will show them who we are. Thank you so much.
Stacey Abrams, American politician, lawyer, voting rights activist. You know her from her time serving in the Georgia House of Reps. She took the stage, kept keeping her remarks very brief, 4 or 5 minutes or so, amping up the crowd as they are getting ready to, within the next hour, start marching towards the Georgia State Capitol. Many of them been out there since before 10 o'clock this morning, the event officially getting underway at 10 a.m. Here we are 2 hours later, still listening to some speakers. And again, they are ending the day, the No Kings rally in Atlanta at the Georgia State Capitol, about a 1.5 mile walk from where they stand now.
Yeah, and then as we look into the crowd, we see people wearing yellow, and it is a reason for people wearing yellow. The organization They say the reason for wearing yellow, it's a color and symbol of unity, and also in reference to other nonviolent resistance movements. And that's always been the messaging at this point, just making sure that this is a peaceful demonstration. Later on, we're also expected to hear from Representative Hank Johnson, which will also be interesting as he is a federal lawmaker and really at the center of the government shutdown. So we do know the House, they passed their spending plan over to the Senate. So we do want to hear from him. But going back to, you see, as I mentioned, you see a lot of people in the crowd wearing yellow, and the organization says throughout history, people who have come together in protest against authoritarian regimes have utilized a color that is easy to see among a sea of thousands. And they're saying that yellow is bright, it's unmistakable, reminding everybody to really stand together in this movement.
Yeah, show of unity as millions across the country today come together for No Kings rallies, not just here locally, but I believe there's one officially in every single state, and many states like Georgia have multiple throughout the day. Gainesville, Marietta, Fayetteville, Tucker, all those No King protests actually begin a little later in the afternoon. Tucker's slated for 1, Marietta's 2, Gainesville 3 o'clock, and Fayetteville's begins in just about 30 minutes.
Yeah, and we're also going to hear from Playfair, Atlanta, the National Educators Association. We'd be good to hear from them as the Department of Education recently had a big round of layoffs. So we're going to hear from educators as far as why they're passionate and why they are there demonstrating as well. We also were able to see a demonstration in Buffalo, New York. We went to the stage in Washington, D.C. that had the backdrop of the U.S. Capitol. We have demonstrations in Hollywood, Florida. And Dan, you pointed to how interesting that location is.
40% Hispanic makeup there in Hollywood, Florida. It's close to Miami. It's also close to Mar-a-Lago there in West Palm Beach, Florida, where the president is spending his weekend at a time when we are seeing these protests both in his home state of Florida, but also in Washington, D.C., the site of his office. That D.C. protest already beginning. We believe Hollywood's also underway right now. A lot of these happening a little later this afternoon. And we've also been hearing from lawmakers throughout the week leading up to this. House Speaker Mike Johnson encouraging folks to watch the rally today, but he called it the Hate American Rally. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said that the No Kings rally today an affirmation of what America is all about.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list of speakers. We're also expected to hear from Senator Raphael Warnock. So hopefully we'll be able to hear what he had to say during this live stream, because it'll be interesting to hear his point of view, as he's also at the heart of the shutdown. Some of the reasons that people are marching today as well. So
is Senator Ossoff scheduled at all? Of course, he has the re-election coming up in about a year, important midterms.
I don't see him. I mentioned, as far as Representative Hank Johnson, he's on here, but also, just Senator Raphael Warnock. I don't see Ossoff on here.
And I imagine they're obviously going to address what's happening in D.C. It's hard to ignore the elephant in the room, the government shutdown going on what will be week 3 as we start a brand new week with many government workers not receiving a paycheck since the start of the month.
Yeah, and this is going back to, the fact that a lot of people in that crowd, they have on yellow, and they're saying so everyone can see these people, a show of unity. And it goes to when we spoke to Marcus Snipes about security, making sure everyone stays together. Law enforcement monitoring if there are any people, straggling or outside of an area where, that group is dedicated to be. So it's a lot of factors that play into this in organizing and demonstrating.
And he says they are going to have eyes everywhere watching to make sure this thing goes off without a hitch, as it did back in June. Happy to say, really nationwide, there were no issues at these protests as millions showed out in the streets. And we'll be watching for the same today, perhaps. Yeah,
and if you are a person that is watching this live stream, you don't plan on participating in person, and you're planning to go around the metro, he also says try to avoid the areas where those demonstrations are happening, just for the safety of everyone, as far as law enforcement, to make sure they're able to get to the area that the demonstrators are at, just to avoid any traffic. We've been going through a list of where other demonstrations are happening. One happening in Tucker at North Lake Festival Shopping Center. That one is from 1 to 3 p.m. The one in Fayetteville happening at the old Fayette County Courthouse. That's going from 12:30 to 2 p.m. One in Smyrna, Georgia. One in Suwanee. So let's go to Buffalo, New York, where we've been able to see you see the mass of people there. pretty large crowd marching already.
Large crowd there as we are taking an aerial view from Buffalo. We're also, and I'm talking to my producers right now, I'm seeing on NBC News Channel some live shots from D.C., New York City, Nashville, and sound from Atlanta, if we could try to get that at any moment. But for right now, this is Buffalo and a large crowd as they begin marching through the streets. We see some costumes there, as we are also seeing here in Atlanta. Again, this is something we are seeing nationwide today with 2,600 registered locations, this just being one of them right now.
And the group at the Civic Center, they're also expected to march and take the streets. Just to be aware, just a heads up, they're going from the Civic Center to the Capitol. That's mainly focused in the downtown area, so just be aware. So just like this group is marching and taking to the streets, the group here in Atlanta, they're expected to do the same thing. So once they hear from their full list of speakers, they're at the Civic Center, they're expected to march and take the streets. And that was one of the reasons why the city of Atlanta stated that they did give them a permit, because that is important. As Marcus says, you know, law enforcement needs to be aware, city officials need to be aware, and also the public, they also need to be aware of what's happening, so this area is secure and everyone is aware.
And as we try to get a live shot here from Atlanta of what's going on locally, I can tell you that reading from the City of Atlanta statement that you just referenced here, it says the permit has been issued. This statement coming out just a couple days ago. They said the city has been working closely with the organizers of the No Kings March to review and approve the necessary permits. Atlanta, it goes on to say, hosts 300 demonstrations every year. I mean, that comes out to be roughly one every 1.5 days or so. They said that they always support the fundamental right to protest, saying this event is no different. They said they supported the No Kings events held earlier this year on June 14th, and they say they look forward to another peaceful march this weekend, that coming from the city of Atlanta.
Yeah, and if you're also planning on heading to the homecoming, Spellhouse homecoming, you know, just thinking about the fact that there are 2 large gatherings happening in the city. Marcus, who is a law enforcement expert, he says that law enforcement, they have all the resources they need. We're going to listen into this protest. This is the one happening in our nation's capital. Let's listen into this speaker.
Not bow. See those 3 boys standing there, standing in clear defiance to the edict of an unjust ruler. And I can still hear them saying with me, saying with you, saying with people gathered all across this country today, to say that because I see my neighbor, we will not bow. Because I love my neighbor, we will not bow. Because I will protect my neighbor, we will not bow. Because greater is the one that's in me than the one that's in the world. I gotta say one name. That name is Bishop Kenneth Moles. None of you may know who he is. None of you may have never heard his name. But when I was a boy, I was raised in the Baptist church. And every now and then we also slid down the street to Greater Mount Calvary Holy Church. And that means when folk fall out and folk get happy and folk dance all over the church. And there was a man there named Bishop Kenneth Moles. And he simply said these words. He said, because our God is the greatest power, we will not be defeated. And I'll say it again. I know you may not have been to church in a while. I know we may not have seen you in Sunday school or Sabbath school or at the mosque or at the temple. But our God is the greatest power. And any kind of religion that is bound up and caught up in fear, any kind of religion that is bound up and caught up in hate, any kind of religion that is not characterized by love, beloved of God, throw it away. Throw it away. Throw it away. But I'm believing that there are people rising up all over this nation. There are people rising up rising up all over this world who will not bow to hatred, who will not bow to corruption, who will not bow to hypocrisy, who will not bow to fear, who will not bow to suspicion, who will not bow to political violence, who will not bow to a kind of religion that wants to be close to power but won't empower anybody else. We will not bow.
All right, a speaker from Washington, D.C. at the No Kings rally there with the nation's capital in the backdrop as the government shutdown lingers on. Back here, hundreds of miles away in the Peach State, our No Kings rally also continuing in downtown Atlanta.
And we continue to see faith leaders also always a part of movements like this. This is one of the reasons we saw that preacher speaking at that rally happening at the nation's capital. Very interesting to continue to hear the viewpoints from everyone, to hearing why they're so, driven to show up on a Saturday.
What brings them out? Yeah.
Exactly, to go on and demonstrate today. So we are going to continue to go to these different demonstrations happening all across the country. Our Stephanie Warnock, she has been giving us an on-the-ground viewpoint of the rally happening here in Metro Atlanta at the Civic Center. Later on, we're going to continue to follow this. There's others happening in DeKalb County. We're going to go to the one happening in Metro Atlanta at the Civic Center.
Yeah, this happening at the Civic Center. It's about 1.5 miles from the Georgia State Capitol, where folks there are going to march here shortly. Still listening to some speakers right now. You had Stacey Abrams taking the microphone about 15 minutes ago. Let's listen in on who's speaking now.
We may not, like that young man standing in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square, we may not get to see the promised land, but we'll do everything in our power with every ounce of life that we have to make sure that our children and their children can live in the beloved communities. Is it worth fighting for? Are y'all ready to fight? Well, don't get it twisted. Non-violent, peaceful protest, that's what we're talking about. So let's have a great day as we march from this location down to the state capitol so that we can show all of those racists down there, that racist history that is monumented down there, that it's a new day, the beloved community is taking over, y'all.
And that was Representative Hank Johnson that we just heard from, Democratic representative. And we're going to hear from other lawmakers throughout the day, and just going through all the coverage that we are seeing across the country. In Boston, they're in the streets. Right now, we are seeing people in the streets in Philadelphia. We have a rally happening right now in the nation's capital, you just heard from, also in New York City. So these demonstrations are happening pretty much at all major cities across the country, Dan, and people are showing up in the crowds in the middle of the street.
It's hard to get a good crowd estimate whenever you have a big event like this, much less to get it for all 2,000 events nationwide. But we did see a couple estimates. The Harvard Crowd County Consortium estimates between 2 and 5 million people participated in the June protests. Another estimate said roughly 1.5% of the U.S. population participated in June. But organizers are saying what we're seeing today likely to be even larger and may in fact be the largest protest day in modern U.S. history.
Wow, and it is one of the one in June was one of the first major demonstrations that we saw happen during the Trump administration. It was interesting, the No Kings protest, that first demonstration back in June happened on the president's birthday.
That's right, the great military parade that took place a little later that night in D.C. This one happening in the middle of a government shutdown, and a lot has changed between June and now with where our country is headed. I mean, we've had the Charlie Kirk assassination since then. We had the assassination of the Democratic Minneapolis lawmaker and her husband. Not to mention a number of decisions that many Americans taking issue with when it comes to this administration.
Yeah, certainly. And looking back to that protest back in June, We saw one happen in the metro area. We saw that happen in downtown Atlanta. That one mainly, nonviolent, a peaceful rally, but there was also a rally that happened in DeKalb County.
Yeah. Mario Guevara, a Georgia journalist based from El Salvador, was taken into handcuffs there and just recently deported to El Salvador. Let's have more on that now.
Mario Guevara is a tourist in his own country,
El Salvador.
rediscovering a place he left over 20 years ago after facing threats for his work as a journalist.
Aquí mismo me agredieron, me golpearon.
This is where he was attacked, he said, with sticks and rocks before fleeing the country. He sought asylum in the United States, but it was denied in 2012. But yet, immigration authorities allowed him to stay and work as a journalist. That changed in late June, when he was arrested by local police while covering a protest in Atlanta. Immigration authorities took notice and reopened his immigration case and detained him for nearly 4 months. He says an agent confronted him while in custody.
Mario, what are you following us? You get us a hard time. I tell, don't take it personally. It was my job. I tried to inform my community. It was nothing against you.
He was deported last week. And as he finds again the city he grew up in, food is helping him deal with the change. He lost 30 pounds while detained, so for now, he's allowing himself to regain some of it back, sharing the experience with the family he left behind. He says he was ready to comply with the judge's order to return to El Salvador in 2012, but immigration authorities told him he could stay. Now he wonders if it would have been better if they had.
They have to be honest. They have to tell the immigrant, you don't have option. You don't have choice to stay here. You will lose the case, and you will be deported. You only waste time and money. Don't do it.
He admits he likes some of the ideas put forward by Donald Trump because the ideals of the Republican Party align more with his Christian faith. But he regrets dismissing Trump's message on immigration.
But I never imagined it will be something like he's doing now. He's doing something terrible against our community.
This week, he gets to enjoy time with his 2 sons, who came to visit, and deliver equipment so he can go back to being a reporter. A journalist who says his stories about the immigrant experience will now be different.
I think it's more human because I will understand more than before. Because now I'm sure what they live, I'm sure what they told me.
For the people who are thinking about migrating to the U.S., he has a message. Don't do it. It's not worth it right now.
The only thing I can say, President Trump, is be fair with others. Don't matter the color of the skin.
Gustavo Valdez, CNN, San Salvador.
By the way, Mario Guevara joined our Chesley McNeil on The Take just days ago. You can watch that full interview. Just go to YouTube, type in Mario Guevara 11 Alive, and you'll get to see that. He told Chesley he holds no grudge against the officers who took him into custody. He said, quote, "I only wanted to inform my community. My community followed me for my reporting, and I paid the price."
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how his reporting is shaped after he spent so much time at an ICE facility in Folkestone.
On the other side of things,
yes. Yeah. All right, we're going to continue to follow our coverage on the No Kings demonstrations happening all across the country. Stick around here on 11 Alive Plus. We're going to take a short break and be right back. All right, we continue to follow the coverage of the No Kings protests happening all across the country and here in Metro Atlanta. The one here in Atlanta in downtown area is happening at the Atlanta Civic Center, and that's where we find 11 Alive's Seth and Haynock. She joins us from the Civic Center. And Seth, we've been talking to people who have been participating all morning, many people showing up as early as 9 a.m. And the purpose, organizers say, is to push against what they call unchecked power against the Trump administration, Seth.
Yeah, that's right, Ariana. These crowds of protesters have been here since really before 9 a.m. and they have their signs and they are sharing their opinions and their voices against the Trump administration. And right now behind me is speakers. There's a list of speakers actually that have been here on the stage all morning long into the afternoon. And right now speaking is a woman who says she was fired by the CDC. We are also hearing from different leaders here locally in our government. We know something that we continue to hear from people on the microphone is no kings, no kings. They have the crowd chanting that as well. And just moments ago, Stacey Abrams was on the stage, and just before her was Senator Raphael Warnock, and we were able to catch him before he left, and he shared with us his thoughts on why it's so important for people to come out and fight for what they believe in.
In this moment in which we are seeing a president and an administration arrogating to himself power that doesn't belong to him, our message is very clear. This is not about the people in power. It's about the power in the people. And I think that a big part of what the Trump administration is trying to do is weaponize despair. So intimidate and bully people that they won't stand up. He's getting his answer today.
I was talking to Chairman Pitts a moment ago from Fulton County, and he said that it is only appropriate that this be held here because Atlanta is the bedrock of the civil rights movement. I can imagine you agree with him, but what do you have to add about that?
Well, this is the cradle of the civil rights movement. What are the chances that on a small street a few blocks from here, Auburn Avenue, in a little church, that a black kid born in the 20s would emerge and become one of the most powerful and patriotic voices for the meaning of America in the history of this country? His name was Martin Luther King. And so Atlanta is a place where we deeply believe in the American dream. Nobody articulated it more eloquently than Dr. King. Nobody paid a higher price than him and those who marched alongside him. And there comes these moments in the American story where we have to restate and reclaim that basic idea, we the people. That's what we're doing today.
Since we have you here, there's a 3-week-long government shutdown already. Is there any hope that there will be some talks, any resolution, any silver lining that you can tell us about?
Listen, our founding fathers were wise to organize our government such that you really need bipartisanship to move progress forward. And that's good because that's how you get lasting, meaningful change. And so we're asking our Republican sisters and brothers to join us.
All right, and that was Senator Warnock, just one of many speakers here this morning and afternoon. And you want to look at this crowd right now because there are so many people here. And in the next 30 minutes, they will be heading to leave out from the Atlanta Civic Center, and they will be marching down to the state capitol. We're going to head now to the front of the gate so we can give everyone at home another look as people exit the Civic Center and begin their march as a part of the nationwide No Kings movement.
And Seth, walk us through what your conversation was like with Representative Hank Johnson. We saw him also take the stage, a lawmaker in Washington, D.C. We know the House of Representatives, they passed their portion of the government spending plan. What are some of the points that he had to say in regards to today's demonstrations?
Well, first and foremost, he wanted, we actually spoke with him a couple minutes ago before he headed out once he came off the stage. And his main thing is that it's the power that the people hold. He mentioned that in his interview, saying that it's important for people to be here today. That's why he made sure he was present and on that stage, because he said people really hold the true power. It is not the leaders that are at the helm of this, and that we need to remind everyone that that is the case. He also spoke about the importance of taking a stand and how everyone has to work to take control over the Trump administration and also President Trump's power. He says to do whatever he wants right now. He says that there are people that are just co-signing with whatever the president wants right now in Congress, and that needs to change. And so this is just one step in the direction of people standing up against what's happening right now. And yeah, so we're going to have more from him. Again, he gave us a quick interview before he headed out. He's just one of many leaders, lawmakers that are here today. And so we are curious to see how many will be heading out with the rest of this crowd behind me to begin that march to the state capitol, Ariana.
And Seth, as you talked to organizers this morning, they mentioned during the last protest in June that at one point some counter-protesters showed up. The Proud Boys were there at one point. Have you seen any indication that there are counter-protesters there today?
So no, not right now. Everyone we've been seeing here are all on the same side of this, completely supporting the No Kings protest. But again, yeah, like you mentioned, one of the people who are part of the safety volunteers said that back in June there were the Proud Boys that showed up to counter protest. And so we'll see maybe who or if any counter protesters will be showing up along the march as they head down to the state capitol in the next 30 minutes. We'll keep our eyes peeled, but so far it's been very peaceful and nonviolent, which is what the ACLU and organizers here this morning said is what they're hoping for. But they are prepared. Like I said, they do have some medic volunteers and safety volunteers in vests that are monitoring, as well as Atlanta police.
And Seth, before you go, any law enforcement around in the area, on the ground, in the midst of the demonstrations as of right now?
You know, from where we are inside the Atlantic Civic Center, I have not seen any police officers besides maybe two that crossed my path, but they may be in the crowd. Obviously, it's a huge crowd. I can't see everything, but I'm sure they're here somewhere. If not inside of the Atlantic Center gate, they're probably outside preparing for the roadways, as everyone is very soon about to head out and start that march.
Yeah, it's a 1.5 mile walk, Steph. I hope you brought your tennis shoes. And by the way, if you could just go ahead and do a hand count of everybody you see when you pass by. That'd be great. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you so much for your reporting, Seth. Doing a great job.
I've got water too.
Yeah.
And Seth has been giving us a great viewpoint of what's happening in the midst of these demonstrations. As she's mentioned, so many people, and the crowd is massive. You know, we saw the crowd grow since 9 a.m. this morning. We had her live as early as 8:30, and we saw people showing up prepared to demonstrate. We saw them starting as early as 8 a.m. handing out signs. We saw the people starting to show up in costumes. So it's been interesting to see.
Of all ages, too,
Yeah.
and from all backgrounds. And we saw some big names there, politically speaking, take the stage. Stacey Abrams, Raphael Warnock, who you were able to hear from there, the senator from Georgia, and also Congressman Hank Johnson, who, by the way, has a history of engaging in protest. He and Senator Warnock actually joined protesters outside the CDC months ago. And did I hear correctly that you actually once saw him get arrested during a protest?
Yeah, I was covering a voting rights protest in the nation's capital in D.C. As I mentioned, D.C. is no stranger to protests, and quite often lawmakers from both sides of the aisle, mainly Democrats, will get arrested with some of the demonstrators. Capitol Police, they will come out, arrest the lawmakers. There were times when they've been arrested on the Senate side of the building. You had congressmen arrested. I remember seeing the late Representative Sheila Jackson. Representative Hank Johnson was one of the lawmakers. So quite often you would see Hank Johnson on the ground with demonstrators. And at that one I was there, it was for voting rights.
Good trouble, as I think they would call it, right?
Yes, certainly. Following in the steps of late Representative John Lewis, who often would be arrested with those demonstrators up until his time, you know, when he passed away in Congress.
Yeah, rich history even here in Georgia of that. All right, live look now of
This is in Washington, D.C.
Okay, another big one today. And you know, the last time they had the No Kings protest back in June, it was the same day as that big military parade that the president organized, which means that they were not allowed to hold a large-scale No Kings protest like we're seeing today.
Yeah, so this is the first time that D.C. has been able to participate in this demonstration. For many cities, it's their second round of demonstration for the No Kings movement. But this time, the nation's capital is participating. If we're able to listen into this speaker right here, because we have been hearing from people from various viewpoints.
Their beliefs without fear of punishment. It's in our country's constitution. It's the cornerstone of our democracy. Our basic American freedoms are not something that any president can take away from us. So why is Trump trying? What is he so afraid of? This moment is so much bigger than a political disagreement. It's about standing up for our rights and the future of democracy. The democracy we want is a country of freedom, a country of equals, a country of due process and laws that apply to everyone. Not a country where masked ICE agents kidnap people out of their beds in the middle of the night, where they zip tie terrified children together. No. Not a country that tells schools and universities to teach ideology instead of facts. And certainly not a country that sends armed troops into our cities to scare us into silence. I refuse to allow that version of our country to take hold, and I know you do too. The courage that we are creating here today across the nation is contagious. It's powerful, and it's exactly what they're afraid of. I want to tell you something I've learned. The best way to protect our freedom is to act free. I was in my hometown of Buffalo, New York, a couple months ago, and I saw a new billboard up from the Buffalo Public Library. It said, "Free people read freely." Free people read freely. 4 words. I was so struck by the simplicity and the power of that statement, and by the fact that the public library felt the need to make it. Free people read freely. They think freely. They protest freely. They act free. The best way to protect our freedom is to act free. Thank you for doing that today. Thank you for your courage. It's powerful and it's contagious. We live in a democracy and we are going to act free. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah Parker.
My name is Sarah Parker, and I'm the Executive Director of Voices of Florida and a National Coordinator with 5051. But most importantly, I am a Southern Black woman, a proud Floridian, and a mother. I was taught to speak up for what's right and to stand against injustice, to place my little hands over my heart and to believe liberty and justice for all meant something real. But what I once believed America was is being crushed under the boot of this administration. I should be at home with my children, raising them to believe in the promise of this country, not standing here demanding the rights that should never have been up for debate. I am honored to be here today, but this is not what I dreamed of. I never dreamed I'd be standing on a stage like this while millions of people are forced to march and protest peacefully in the streets because we refuse to stand by while this country slips into the iron grip of authoritarianism. question now, when we say with liberty and justice for all, who is all to this administration? Because this administration has made it painfully clear. It sure as hell ain't the people who need access to abortion care. It damn sure ain't the people and their families being ripped apart by deportation and kidnapped in the dead of night. It's not our LGBTQ communities and BIPOC communities being criminalized just for existing. And it damn sure ain't the people marching for justice while the National Guard is unleashed on peaceful protesters in their own streets. Contrary to popular belief, the fabric of this country wasn't woven by oligarchs, corporations, or power-hungry politicians. It was stitched together by workers, by immigrants, by black and brown communities, by women, by queer folks, and by people who refuse to stay quiet in the face of injustice. This movement was made by the people. This movement, No Kings, was named by the people. This movement is the people. And newsflash to this administration and for the people who need it, this country was built on protests. And some of the most important changes in our history happened because everyday Americans just like us. And now, those in power are trying to unravel it thread by thread, taking away rights, stripping away dignity, rewriting what freedom actually means. They've tried to silence us with fear. They've tried to gaslight us with lies. And politicians have stood in front of the cameras, smugly, I may say, peddling smear after smear. Because it's easier for them to smear the American people than to recognize what they're doing to this country. And where I come from, we call that cowardice. We refuse. I refuse to let this become our reality. It is our duty. It is our right as Americans to dissent when democracy is under threat. Let me be clear. Democracy dies when we are silent. But democracy is reborn when we speak with courage. And authoritarianism cannot withstand truth. And it crumbles under the power of love and dissent. And as leaders before me have said, courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to act despite of it. And for what it's worth, I am proud of each and every courageous leader that is taking the streets today. We are peaceful because we know that's how real change is created. We are fighting because we love our communities and we love our country. We are using our voices because it is our God-given American right. And anyone who says otherwise is not only lying to the American people, they are lying to themselves, and I don't know how they sleep at night. And like we say in the South, a hit dog will holler, and I'm hearing a lot of hollering come from the Capitol building. The American people are pissed. And I would like to say before I go, I want to thank every last one of you. I want to thank all the organizers with 5051. I want to thank Political Revolution, who's a national partner. But I want to thank our children. I want to thank our teachers.
And right now we are listening into the No Kings demonstration happening in our nation's capital. What's interesting, you have the backdrop of the U.S. Capitol for this demonstration. So we were able to hear from a speaker from the ACLU, and you were also looking at chopper video of demonstrators preparing to march from the Atlanta Civic Center to our state capitol as they are preparing to get into place. And you saw the crowds and the number of people. And our 7-inch Haynock has been giving us an on-the-ground look as these demonstrators are about to walk. Seth, walk us through what's happening right now.
Yeah, so right now you can hear the drums behind me, but this is the crowd that was inside of the Atlanta Civic Center, and now everyone is leaving out towards the street because at 1 p.m. they are supposed to begin the march to the state capitol. You can see everyone's signs as they're heading out because they're taking part, as we know, in the No Kings protest. Since 10 a.m. they've been here within the gates of the Atlanta Civic Center, where there was really a program. There was music. There was a lot of key speakers taking on the stage, including Senator Warnock. There was Stacey Abrams and a member from the CDC who claimed she was fired. And so a lot of different people, a lot of different ages. We've seen young kids here, families. But now at this point, this is where everyone is about to line up and begin the march to the state capitol. And we do want to say that earlier this morning we spoke to volunteers. There's medics on standby. And there's also safety volunteers who have been trained, they say, in de-escalation. And so far, everything has remained non-violent. And so that is what they're hoping it will remain as they head out to the street. But we know back in June, there were some counter-protesters. So we're going to see and tag along as the march is now about to begin.
And Seth, can you give us a walkthrough of some of the streets that the protesters will be on, some of the streets around that area? Were they able to give you kind of like a direction of the protesters as they start marching to the Capitol?
Well, right here behind me is Ralph McGill. You can see where they're going, I believe Piedmont Avenue, and taking that way down to the state capitol. And then I think they're really just going to be hanging out over there, maybe near Liberty Plaza, as they did back in June. Yeah, and that's kind of where they're headed to now at this point. It looks like everyone is heading there too. So if you're in that area, you're going to see all the protesters. They will be hard to mention. There's hundreds, if not at least 1,000 here right now.
Yeah, and right now, Seth, as you're speaking, we're also getting a bird's eye view from the chopper of the route as these protesters, they're now heading into the street from the Civic Center to start that movement to the Capitol, Dan.
Yeah, in fact, I want to quote here the editor of the Georgia Recorder saying that organizers telling her more than 10,000 people have turned out for the No Kings rally there at the Atlantic Civic Center in Georgia. She says the actual number could be closer to 12,000. And as we take a live look from our chopper giving you that aerial view, it's easy to see we are talking about several thousand people here. If indeed the number is close to 10,000 as being reported from Jill Nolan of the Georgia Recorder, that's enough people to fill the Fox Theater twice.
Oh, wow. Interesting point. All right, and you're seeing right now the area that these demonstrators are going to be on, which streets they're going to be on. We saw the Georgia Power Building. So if you live in this area, you're traveling in this area, you know, be aware the streets are blocked at this point. Once again, they're going to the state capitol. They're going from the Civic Center to the state capitol. Most of the demonstrations are happening in the downtown area. And when we spoke to our law enforcement expert, he said, hey, if you are in that surrounding area, just try to avoid it if you're not partaking in the demonstration, just, you know, for the safety of everyone, just to make everything easier for law enforcement, for police, as they're trying to manage and navigate the demonstrations through the streets. It is expected to start, they're going to start marching according to their schedule at 1 p.m. and head there. We don't have their exact route that is planned, but the one that would make sense is for them to leave from the Atlantic Civic Center, go south on Piedmont Avenue. They will cross underneath Interstate 85, and then probably the next best landmark I can give you is they'll pass by Grady Memorial Hospital. And that's kind of when they make the turn by Georgia State University. And at this point, they are still on Piedmont Avenue Southeast. So really, they can just stay on Piedmont Avenue all the way from the Civic Center as they head south on their march to the Georgia State Capitol building, a march that will take them about 1.5 miles through the city of Atlanta. And it's a march that you see several thousand people about to embark on. Yeah, and just important to note, they won't impact the interstate, just the roads around the Atlantic Civic Center, around the state capitol. And we can expect, just looking back at the demonstration that happened back in June, the first No Kings protest, they pretty much stayed at the Capitol once they were able to make it to that area. So just be aware, if you have plans to head anywhere around the state capitol, you're going to see this group of demonstrators marching. They will be in the street. Law enforcement, as we can see from this point of view, they have been blocking off the street and blocking off the roads to allow the protesters to march, make sure traffic is still flowing in the vicinity, but just be aware that those streets will be blocked off and they will be in that area. So traffic will certainly be impacted. And we also know that demonstrations will be happening in other areas across the metro. So you can have traffic, impacted all throughout the day. We know there's one happening in Tucker. That's going on from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. You also have the demonstration in Fayetteville from 12:30 to 2 p.m. In Marietta from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. and also in Gainesville from 3 to 4:30. But, as far as the plans that we have, most of those will be in a concentrated area. We don't have any plans of them marching anywhere. So.
Right. The Square in Decatur actually hosting one right now as well. Right. Cody Alcorn posting some pictures from there. I believe that were submitted by a viewer. You can see those on Cody's social media right now. So in situations like the Decatur protests, yes, likely to be stationary, maybe a small march, nothing to the scale that we're seeing in downtown Atlanta today, where thousands marching more than a mile. Really the only issue we saw last time that these protests took place in Metro Atlanta was in June with the one in DeKalb County on Chamblee Tucker Road. And that was when we saw some of the protesters refuse to leave the road. And of course, police there to help allow traffic to move on, to keep the protesters on the sidewalks. And then we saw 8 people arrested after police say they would not move from the road, that back in June.
Yeah, they were trying to get onto the highway 285. So obviously that is a safety risk. We want to make sure traffic is able to flow. Emergency vehicles can get to where they need to. And that's why it's important for, these demonstrations to make sure they do apply for the proper permits so they can plan, making sure things can continue to run smoothly. Law enforcement is planning. You just see the crowd of people and how many people they have to plan for to make sure everything stays safe and people can demonstrate safely in these situations. DeKalb County actually issuing a peaceful protest protocol guide this week, disseminating that to folks. And they said one thing you want to do not cover your face with scarves, bandanas, or fabric coverings. And as we take a live look from the Atlanta march, I in fact see I see one face mask there. They say the surgical medical masks are okay. But other than that, everybody exposing their face and appears happy to be out there with their fellow Americans today, engaging in their right to protest the First Amendment. Also from DeKalb County, they say do not block roads or entrances, as we just discussed there. Obviously, do not bring weapons and do not engage with agitators or incite violence. As we were talking to Stephanie Chaynock, our reporter there on the scene, she said she did not see any counter-protesters there at the Atlanta Civic Center. Of course, in a crowd of 10,000 people, it might be hard to see, get an idea of who all is there. But last time we did have this protest in Metro Atlanta, organizers say the Proud Boys showed up, and at one point there was a little bit of engagement between the No Kings protesters and the counter-protesters, the Proud Boys. Yeah, but as of right now, we haven't had any indication or any notifications in regard to counter-protesters or any counter demonstrations more so happening in the midst of this current No Kings demonstration happening in the downtown area. So once again, getting a live look at the demonstration happening in Metro Atlanta, this one happening at the Civic Center, and we also have a chopper view of what's happening as the crowd is currently filing out into the street so they can start their march from the Civic Center to the state capitol. They were scheduled to start marching at 1 p.m. and right now it's 12:53, and it seems like they are on schedule. We have seen a lot of costumes, Dan. Yeah. Right, there is a unicorn. We spoke to a nurse who was dressed up as a bear with her sign saying, "We can't bear another dictator." We've seen quite the images throughout the day. Yeah, getting creative with some of their costumes. By the way, it's not just here in Atlanta. This is going on nationwide right now. 2,600 registered locations for the No Kings protests today. We've been dipping in, taking live looks from Nashville, Tennessee earlier today, Buffalo, New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Miami. They're all having protests as we speak, Milwaukee, Indianapolis. I mean, the list goes on and on. In fact, every state
has a registered protest today. It's expected by organizers to be perhaps the largest single day of protest in modern U.S. history.
Yeah, and just going back to the main messaging and the No Kings demonstration and the point of all these rallies happening across the country, the organizers say they come as the Trump administration is facing accusations of abusing power, with the message that there's no kings in America, that the power belongs to the people. In America, we have no kings, not now, not ever. And protesters say peaceful accountability, unity, and not conflict. That is at the center of their message today. So we will be monitoring these demonstrations and just seeing how many people show up and how they show up in their demonstrations and their movements. And we're going to continue to look at some of the signs because it really gives us a viewpoint of why people are so passionate to show up on a Saturday and demonstrate today, Dan. On
the other side of things, we did earlier this morning speak to the Georgia GOP chair, Josh McCoon, and we asked him for his thoughts on the rally today. And he said he'd like to know what exactly they're protesting against. He says effectively, what rights do they not have now that they once had? We've also heard from House Speaker Mike Johnson earlier this week. He called it the Hate America rally, saying that they're going to descend on our Capitol for their much anticipated so-called No Kings rally. So we are hearing from the other side. In fact, we'd love to bring you some more of Josh McCoon at some point this morning, but just know we did have the other side on for 25 minutes this morning and allowed him to give his perspective of the Republican Party, not just here in Georgia, but also broadly speaking nationwide.
Yeah, and just hearing, his response to some of the messages that we're hearing from people, some of the reasons why they say they came out, pointing to health care. He says, yes, we do need to have a conversation on health care. And we did see you see images of people holding American flags. Mm-hmm. And he says the Republican Party, they're proud to be Americans, but I do see people holding up an American flag with pride, saying, yes, we are demonstrating here in America. But people that we spoke to, Stephen Chaynock says, I want to grow up in a country that I remember, in America that I remember growing up. So.
All right, as we take a look at this aerial view, try to acquaint us with where we are right now. As this group marches from the Atlantic Civic Center, it looks like they are approaching I-85, and I believe their best route that they're going to have to take is the overpass that goes by Baker Street as they march south. And we are talking several thousand people out there. So as our chopper now zooms in, yeah, they are indeed on the overpass there, I believe, passing by Baker Street that runs east to west, and they will continue their march south as they go to the Georgia Capitol. But certainly going to be some traffic impacts here, but you see interstate traffic for the most part moving okay.
Yeah. And like I mentioned, we've been hearing from lawmakers, we have been hearing from advocates. We had the chance to speak to Representative Hank Johnson. He took the stage at the Civic Center for the Metro Atlanta demonstration. Let's listen in to what he had to say to our Stephen Chaynock.
We the people need to show up en masse to protest the derogation of our democracy and the obliteration of the rights thereunder, which each of us, it affects each of us. And so whether or not you are a member of Congress like myself, or whether or not you're just an ordinary working person or a person in poverty, whether or not you're a millionaire, we all should come together because all of our rights are impacted by what's going on with this Trump move towards authoritarianism.
All right, Congressman Hank Johnson there, who practices what he preaches.
Yes, he does.
He has been arrested before at a protest,
yeah.
and he's engaged in multiple protests over his time.
Yeah, certainly. And we also had the chance to speak to Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock, Stacey Abrams. She also took the stage. So we're seeing a lot of big names get involved in today's demonstration and really joining the people as they protest. You know, they say this is about democracy. So we are seeing our democracy in action, and the lawmakers, you know, really coming down from Washington, come to Atlanta to march with their constituents.
Well, it's a great opportunity as well for constituents to speak to them one-on-one and to ask questions in that kind of very personal environment. And I imagine a lot of constituents here in the Atlanta area, a lot of federal workers have questions when it comes to the government shutdown. Now heading into week 3, many of these congressional leaders haven't really been doing much since September, in fact.
Yeah, more so just voting as far as the Senate voting and not, seeing a spending bill pass.
Yeah.
We're going to go to our Stephanie Chanok. She has been on the ground with us at the Civic Center. And Steph, we see people filing out of that area, and we are starting to see them file into the streets. We got that bird's eye view of people now marching to the Capitol, Steph.
Yeah, and they've been marching out of the Atlanta Civic Center for a while now because it's just that many people that have been here since 10 a.m. at the No Kings protests inside of the gate. We know right now, in 1 minute, 1 p.m., that is when the official march is supposed to begin to the state capitol. And yeah, it's so many people, so many signs, and it's just only getting started. They've been here since before 9 a.m. They listened to those key leaders you mentioned here on the stage. There was music, there was a little dancing, and most importantly, it was no violence. It was very peaceful. We didn't run into any type of counter protesters since we've been here early this morning. Not that we saw any commotion of any sort. We know that there are safety volunteers here making sure that they are available just in case de-escalation is needed amongst people. We also know medics are on standby. They too volunteering today. And they told us, the medical volunteers, that they were not expecting anything other than maybe dehydration as people begin to start the march. It is warming up out here now. Maybe someone tripping, they told me, would be something that they're expecting to assist with, but they are trained for anything that comes their way. But of course, right now, everyone so peaceful, and that's what they're hoping it remains as, guys, today.
We see the last few of the crowd leaving the Civic Center as of right now. We see most of the people now in the street, according to Chopper, getting that bird's eye view of a lot of the protesters now in the street to start their march from the Civic Center to the Capitol. Pretty much on schedule as of right now, Dan.
Yeah, it is 1 o'clock. If you were just now joining us, this is a live look from the Atlanta No Kings protest, one of many happening across the country. Our Stephanie Chanok there live on the scene, bringing us that report. Steph, we appreciate that as we now take a live look from our chopper as the crowd now moves from the Atlanta Civic Center heading south towards the Georgia State Capitol. By one estimate from the Georgia Recorder editor, just posted on X, she cites organizers when she says that this crowd in Atlanta estimated at between 10 to 12,000 people, a much larger number from the last protest back in June. And they are taken to the streets, marching about 1.5 miles. It appears the head of this march now going past Baker Street. They are traveling south on Piedmont Avenue, going past more of a residential area, it appears, with apartments and high rises. And then they will soon get to more of the government section of the city, passing by the state capitol, some government offices. They'll also pass by Grady Memorial Hospital, Georgia State University before making their way there to the state capitol.
Yeah, and looking at my map, I see that Piedmont Avenue is shut down. So if you are traveling in that area, just be aware to avoid that area. As it appears, the protesters are headed down Piedmont to make their way to the Capitol. So thousands of people showed out today in Metro Atlanta for this particular rally at the Civic Center.
And Spellhouse homecoming going on right now, too.
Yeah, so 2 large gatherings happening. When we spoke to the law enforcement analysts, we spoke to Marcus, and we pretty much asked him, how is law enforcement managing both of these large-scale events? One that can, tend to be a little politically charged with the threat of counter-protesters. Yeah. And he says they have the plan. Spellhouse happens annually, so they pretty much know what resources they need. And as far as protests, they said Atlanta always holds protests, so they know what they need to do. Yeah. They're watching this from every single angle, and so are you right now here on 11 Alive Plus, watching it from our chopper as we are following the group marching to the Capitol.
Yeah, Marcus said this is a city that is accustomed to hosting big events and preparing for large-scale crowds like we're seeing tonight. You know, he mentioned some days there will be a Braves game the same day as a Falcons game, and they have to accommodate for that. You have the Hawks season starting up soon. This is a city that once hosted the Olympics and will soon be hosting the World Cup. And that's just to name some large sporting events that Atlanta police and City of Atlanta officials are used to dealing with. And so a crowd of 10,000 people, if that's indeed what the estimate comes out to be, it's not to say it's not nothing for them, but it's certainly something they're used to. You know, I was at the Monday Night Football game this week, the Bills at the Falcons, and took Marta back to my house, and great crowd control there, you know. So this is something that city officials are quite accustomed to. In fact, the City of Atlanta issuing the permit days ago to allow this protest to take place, saying they've been working closely with the organizers of the No Kings March. And the city goes on to say, yeah, you know, we do this quite often, 300 protests and demonstrations every year in the city of Atlanta. And they say they're looking forward to a peaceful march today.
And right now it appears they are near Piedmont Avenue Northeast and Baker Street Northeast. So just to give you kind of like a perspective and add some more context to where the group is headed as of right now, once again, they're going to the state capitol, and it appears that they are right in the heart of the city on Baker Street and Piedmont. It looks like the group has kind of slowed down.
Yeah.
Does it appear?
You know, if you're estimating maybe 20 to 30 minutes, if you're walking at a brisk pace for this, it's looking like maybe it's going to be more like 30 minutes to an hour. Yeah. As it does appear that the group slowed down there around Baker Street, just over I-85 as they continue their march down Piedmont Avenue. And we're going to continue our coverage after this short break.
You are on our coverage of the No Kings demonstrations happening here in Metro Atlanta and all across the country. One of the rallies that is happening is in our nation's capital. Let's take a listen into what some of the speakers are saying there in D.C.
That we as a nation should never, ever again be ruled by a tyrant or a king. That was as true today as it was back then. And that is why millions of people today from all walks of life are turning out at these thousands of events. Republicans, Democrats, independents, black, brown, white, this 68-year-old Jewish baby boomer, Muslim small business business owners, Christian Gen Zers. This is, as Ijen said, we are the majority of America. And what do we want? What do we want? We want the promise of America for everyone. We want a voice in our future. We are standing up in peaceful, patriotic protest, just like our founders called out. No thrones, no crowns, no kings. We are standing up because we don't want our streets militarized. We don't want our neighbors disappeared by masked Asians. We don't want our colleges forced to sign loyalty oaths. We don't want, what? We don't want public officials arrested on trumped-up political charges. And, this is a little different, we want our federal government to fix the health care crisis that was created by the big ugly bill Republicans passed in July. We want a president who will keep health care premiums down, bring down the cost of groceries and housing, strengthen public schools, make college affordable, and embrace workers' rights. Again, what is radical about any of that? Exactly. We want the president to spend his time solving our country's problems, not settling scores with political opponents. We want a future that is based on fairness and justice and the rule of law, not chaos, corruption, or cruelty. So, I'm going to end with a couple of labor slogans here. Because, my friends, we are in an existential fight. And right now, we all have to organize and be stronger and bolder because no one is going to save us but ourselves. So, we got a lot of sayings in labor, but the first one is, when we fight, when we fight, when we fight, and the second is, the people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated or divided. Either one is fine. So, are we united today? Will we fight for our democracy? Will we fight for the promise of America? This is about loving America, right? So we're sending a clear message to the president. Rather than smearing those calling out problems, solve those problems. So today, no kings. Tomorrow, freedom. Today, no kings. Tomorrow, freedom.
You are listening live to a speaker there at the No Kings rally in Washington, D.C., where on the right side of your screen, you're seeing an aerial view of marchers here in Atlanta make their way to the Georgia State Capitol. Also in D.C. today, we saw Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy also headlined that No Kings rally event there. On the other side of things, National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett this morning on Fox News calling the demonstrations misguided and saying, well, I mean, they're out there exercising their First Amendment right. They're actually proving that they have freedoms. And Ariana, we also this morning here on 11 Alive heard from a local Republican Georgia official giving us his perspective.
Yeah, that's right. We heard from the GOP chairman, Josh McCoon, speaking to some of the viewpoints of the people who are participating, kind of just going back and forth with, you know, what we're hearing on the ground and what Republicans have to say to some of the viewpoints of the people that are marching. Let's listen into this speaker here in our nation's, actually, we're going to hear from GOP Chairman Josh McCoon. During our interview, we had the chance to speak with him about an hour ago. Let's listen in.
Just today, at today's protest, I've seen signs with swastikas. I've seen people calling Republicans Nazis and fascists. And I'm not saying it's all one side or the other, but there's a lot of that rhetoric that comes from the left. And that is irresponsible because it inspires people to do terrible things. So if we want to disagree on the issues, let's disagree on the issues. We can disagree passionately, but let's be very, very careful about saying things that we know are not true to try to strip away someone's humanity.
And that was what he was saying in regards to why people feel like they had to demonstrate today. He says that, I don't understand why, as far as, President Trump has done a lot, during his time in the administration. And it kind of goes along with what we are hearing from Republicans, on Capitol Hill in regards to the demonstrations today. President Trump calling them lawless. Speaker Mike Johnson saying it's a hate America rally. So it's interesting to hear, the viewpoints of Republicans. But we have seen Republicans actually participating in the demonstrations. Our NBC affiliate in Nashville is saying they spoke to a Republican who says, I voted Republican all my life, and I'm just disappointed with where the country stands right now. A lot of perspectives, a lot of people from all generations, all walks of life, really being vocal today, as far as a lot of people across the country are demonstrating, are participating, and really bringing their perspective and their viewpoint, to the forefront today.
I mean, you could argue both parties very fractured at this point. We saw it last election on the Democratic side, traditional Democratic values, the progressive wing, hard to get everybody to kind of get behind a particular candidate. And then on the Republican side, to your point, you have the MAGA base, the strong Trump supporters, and then you have the Lincoln Party folks, many of whom might be out there today. Some of the more traditional conservatives who may find themselves having difficulties getting behind some of the recent actions from the administration. And Chairman McCoon here in Georgia going to have to find a way to get all those Republicans together for an important midterm election coming up next year for what many view is a winnable seat or what could be a winnable seat for Republicans when it comes to the Senate race against sitting Senator John Ossoff. But also they have the Republican seat that they want to try to keep red as well. Yeah, exactly, the governor's seat. And, we haven't had a governor since, a governor that is a Democrat since the 90s. And that's what Josh was saying. He said that, Georgia has been a great place to do business, as we have Republicans leading the highest office in the state. So, saying that, people are getting jobs. This is a great economy, pointing to some of the points as the Hyundai plant, that was once pointed to as one of the greatest economic developments in state history, but also at that same plant, we had an ICE raid. So yeah, that's right. Yeah, so a lot playing out over the course of the last few months. Once again, we are taking a live bird's eye view of the demonstration. The demonstrators are now marching to the state capitol. Last time I checked at the map, they were on Piedmont. If you are around this area, you plan to travel around this area, we see that the road is blocked off. So just be aware, if you are attempting to navigate the downtown area, you will see this large group of demonstrators marching to the state capitol today. And they have been out there since around 10 a.m. this morning. Their demonstration first started at the Atlanta Civic Center, and now they are moving that demonstration to the state capitol. And this is a scene that we've played out across the country. We've been looking at cameras here on our computer of demonstrations happening in Philly, and it's a very similar scene in Boston. We have been dipping into the coverage at the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. They still have speakers, and there were also speakers at this demonstration here in Metro Atlanta. So just be aware that these demonstrations will be playing out all day. I mean, Buffalo, New York looked like they also had a large crowd as they were marching through the streets of Buffalo. Minneapolis, Phoenix, Denver. I mean, look, every state in America today has one of these registered protests, 2,600 nationwide, and there's a number happening in Georgia as well. Somewhere in the stack of sheets, here it is. Okay. These are the other protests happening today around Georgia and Metro Atlanta. Gainesville, that begins at 3 o'clock today. Marietta from 2 to 4. Fayetteville, 12:30 to 2, that one going on as we speak. Tucker from 1 to 3, and also apparently there is one in Decatur as well, at Decatur Square as we speak. So a number of people out there today taking to the streets, making their voices heard.
Yeah, and it appears from the plans that we receive, these demonstrations, the ones happening at different cities in areas across the metro, they appear to be happening at a centralized location. It doesn't appear that they plan to march, but most of them are playing out throughout the day. So the one in Smyrna, Georgia, that's happening right now. That one is running from 11 to 2. And the one in Fayetteville, that one is underway right now. That one is wrapping up at 2 p.m. That one's happening at the Old Fayette County Courthouse. And the one in Forsyth County, that one is just getting underway. They are slated to go from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. at a McDonald's in Forsyth County. Also one in Chamblee Tucker, that one is getting underway at 2 p.m. and they're expected to go until 6:30 p.m. And their messaging for the one in Chamblee is the no National Guard in Georgia. So different demonstrations, different perspectives, different messaging coming out of all these rallies happening today.
And you know, when the last time we had this protest here in Atlanta, No King's Day, back on June 14th, it was really around anti-ICE raids, and that was the big story going into the summer months, and that's really was their big message back there in mid-June. And we saw things go off without a hitch here in downtown Atlanta for that protest, but then a little further north in DeKalb County along Chamblee Tucker Road, we saw 8 people arrested for not getting out of the streets. And another arrest that day was Georgia journalist Mario Guevara, who is from El Salvador. He was arrested that day. He was eventually put into ICE custody and, in fact, was just deported to El Salvador in the last few weeks. We ran a great piece on him not too long ago this morning. Might try to re-cue that again for you today because it gives you an idea of what happened last time this protest was held here. And as far as we can see, as we continue to check the wires from the Associated Press, continue to check with our partners at NBC and CNN, we are seeing no issues as these protests are unfolding nationwide this morning.
Yeah, and just to be aware, it looks like they're shutting down more streets in that area where the protesters are. Mainly, it looks like they are on Piedmont as of right now, and between Baker Street, Piedmont and Baker and Cortland, those areas are shut down. It looks like we see police officers at the end of the demonstration. Yeah, because law enforcement is certainly involved in this, making sure streets are blocked off, making sure the demonstrations are, contained to the area where they received that permit. Their goal is to make it to the state capitol. So just be aware if you're traveling in that area, these streets are blocked off and traffic is gathering around Baker Street as they appear to be remaining on Piedmont. It looks like Cortland is also blocked off at this point as the demonstrators are in the middle of the street right now.
Hey, they got nice weather for a walk today. It's 75 degrees of the sun beating down, so it's going to feel a little hotter out there. And I know they were preaching the importance of staying hydrated earlier today. And they also have medics out there on standby should anybody need that assistance. By the way, you saw people really of all ages as we were checking in with Stephanie Chaynock throughout the morning. We saw some children out there and also some older folks as well who I imagine they would tell you this is not their first protest.
Yeah, no, certainly not. And once again, we see law enforcement in the middle of the street with the demonstrators, really guiding them through the downtown area as they make this trek from the Civic Center all the way to the state capitol. Law enforcement blocking off streets around where the demonstration has been centered as they are marching through the streets. They were slated to start at 1 p.m. They started on time. It looks like they're slowly making their way through the downtown area. So once again, those streets are blocked off in this area around you if you live in the vicinity of where this demonstration is happening. It appears, like I said, on Piedmont is where they pretty much, seem to stay at this point.
Right. It looks like it could just be a straight shot for them there as they likely approaching Andrew Young International right now, perhaps getting close to Ellis Street at some point towards the Sweet Auburn neighborhood. And then by then, they're practically there. They're going to pass by Grady Memorial Hospital. Georgia State University will be on their right side as they head south. And then they will find themselves at the Georgia State Capitol and Liberty Plaza, which, if indeed this crowd is 10,000. Can Liberty Plaza hold that? I don't think so. Let's see Liberty Plaza capacity. Let's see what the Google says. It can hold over 3,000 people.
Okay,
so they may need to start dispersing once they get there.
Yeah, it looks like that. And, you know, as you mentioned, around 10,000 people, and they were hoping that this protest was larger than the first one that we saw back in June, a day of much better weather for these people that are planning to participate. So once again, we are getting a bird's eye view of what's happening on the ground. Our Stephanie Chanok, she started with the demonstrators when they were at the Civic Center as they were slowly filing out into the street. And we are just looking at the kind of...
Our city looks great, does it not? It's nice to see Atlanta from this perspective on a Saturday afternoon in the fall. The dogs kick off in a couple hours, but that's not keeping many people from going out and exercising their First Amendment right this morning, as this is the second No Kings protest we've seen in recent months.
Yeah, and the ones happening across the country, you know, it's hard to get a count of how many people participated in the first one, but they counted 5 million people of ones across the country.
Right. The Harvard Crowd Counting Consortium estimates between 2 and 5 million people. Another estimate shows that's roughly 1.5% of the U.S. population that was out there in June. And organizers today say they believe it's going to be even larger, and that they expect this could be the largest U.S. protest single day in modern U.S. history.
Yeah, so looking at the cameras from other demonstrations happening across the country, in Boston, a very similar scene, people walking in the street. It looks like a much larger crowd than the one we had here at the Civic Center. You also see a rally happening this is Boston on the left. Yeah, it looks like they have a stage set up very similar to the one that we saw here in Atlanta. Going to New York, we also saw a very similar scene of people in the street. But just look at the crowd of people in Boston. Once again, you know, seeing the people all across the country on this Saturday participate in this demonstration. Look at the crowd, Dan.
Well, and I tell you, it's important to a lot of folks in Boston because the president has been talking about sending the National Guard to Boston with already discussion of, you know, sending them to other American cities. We've seen it in D.C., Memphis, Portland, Chicago. But also, I recall the president talking about sending the National Guard potentially to Boston as well, saying something about their mayor there. Meanwhile, the Massachusetts governor came out and said, no, we absolutely do not need the National Guard in Massachusetts. So perhaps this an issue near and dear to the hearts of many there in Boston. And by the way, they can certainly accommodate a large crowd. I forgot the name of that park there. I was there over the summer. Beautiful, large park that can accommodate many, no doubt.
Yeah, and we are seeing the rallies also happen in Philadelphia, very similar scene. We've been dipping into the coverage happening in our nation's capital. We saw many speakers take the stage, some from the ACLU, different walks of life, different generations there voicing their concern about what they feel is happening all across the country and speaking to the fact of the National Guard. And that was one of the main viewpoints of a lot of people participating this time around. They pointed to the Trump administration mobilizing National Guard troops to major cities across the country. And that was, they said this time around, this is what this is about. Of course, you had other people, you know, we saw a speaker here in Atlanta talking about her being laid off at the CDC. We heard from a nurse, you know, pointing to the issue of healthcare, which is one of the reasons the government remains shut down. So we are here on this Saturday with a lot of issues at stake and a lot of people, you know, saying that's what drove them out today.
And that's why we have our Stephanie Chanok down there talking with people to ask them what drove them out today. I see from NBC News, they recently spoke to a protester who says this is their first time to a protest. They say they are fueled by extreme frustration, and that's what brought them out. She, by the way, 62 years old, from Centerville, Virginia, but decided to go to the Washington, D.C. No Kings protest today because of her, quote, extreme frustration. So our teams of reporters are in Atlanta. We're also going to be spread out across Metro today at other protest sites today as we bring you firsthand account from folks, from your very neighbors who decided to go out today and why this was important for them, and also bringing you a different perspective from the other side of the aisle. We heard from Georgia GOP Chair Josh McCoon today as well. And also within the last couple of hours, we brought you analysis from a security expert, Marcus Snipe, who talked about what goes in to preparing for crowds like this, a crowd that by some accounts in Atlanta, very early accounts, has swelled up to perhaps 10,000 people as you were looking live from that aerial view, and they continue to march down south on Piedmont Avenue, heading towards the Georgia State Capitol. Yeah, and in addition to the flags that we've seen flying, American flags, we've seen signs, and it's been interesting to see people walking and marching in inflatables. And looking at CNN, and they spoke to people who are dressed in costumes, and they say it's a reason they're in a costume, and they say they want to show that they're not violent. Mm-hmm. They're here to have fun, but they want to make sure that they're being seen as not a terrorist, as some on the other side have said this was lawless protest. The Hate America rally. Yes. So they said they want to show that I think inflatables just really show that we're not violent. We're just trying to show up and support our community. So it was interesting. I did want to know what was the reasoning behind the costume, and we are hearing firsthand for some of the reasons, which is, it's pretty compelling. Yeah, a lot of folks getting creative. Yeah. They said if we're going to be out there, we're going to have a little fun with it as well. We are getting ready to wrap up here for our streaming coverage, and we do want to thank you for making us a part of your morning, turning into afternoon, as what could be a very newsworthy day in the history of the U.S., if indeed this turns out to be the largest U.S. protest in single-day history. Yes, certainly. And we're going to continue to gather our coverage, and we're going to bring this to you as these demonstrations continue to play out across the metro area. We're going to have more on this on our newscast at 6 p.m. Our reporters will be on the ground following the demonstrations that are happening. As we mentioned, all morning. They are playing out all throughout the day. So we're going to have that for you to get a wrap-up of all the coverage and all the demonstrations. Yeah, we thank you for making us a part of your day. You continue to follow our coverage on 11alive.com and a little later here on 11 Alive Plus. For Ariana Manise, I'm Dan Kennedy. Have a great Saturday.